At this academy, only half of you will survive to see your second year. And anyone is considered lucky to actually graduate. That's why they say graduating late isn't an achievement. It's a miracle. And on the very first day, during the very first test, the professor made it clear. 20 minutes to finish, or they'd be expelled on the spot. Everyone dove in, desperate, but the level of knowledge required for the ancient runes was too advanced. And then, a piece of paper was torn in half. The girl, Krista Warden, the most promising genius of her generation, could only watch as her one chance to pass the test vanished. She thought she'd made a mistake. She thought the wind had carried it away. But she didn't realize someone in this room had just sabotaged her. The boy sitting next to her simply had to glance at the flow of mana and trace the mana string back to its source. Wind magic, silent and colorless. The culprit, a blonde prodigy sitting a few rows ahead, was smiling and pretending nothing had happened. 8 minutes left. Krista was rewriting everything from scratch. Hands trembling, hand flying. She told Rain to give her his paper so she could copy the answers, but he pulled it back. He told her the method she was using wouldn't make it in time. She asked how he could possibly know that without trying. He said the test was still doable, it was just that her method was too time-consuming. So, he took the pen himself and began to work his magic. Before they could even stand up, the blonde kid had already gone ahead. Hubert, the runner-up genius of delay, the pride of Rohum Academy, was the same one who had torn their paper with invisible wind magic, thinking no one noticed. He placed his answers on the professor's desk as if he'd already won. The professor used an analysis spell, checking the ancient runes, the response time, and said it wasn't bad, but not excellent either. A problem like this should only take 2 minutes. A theorem. The kid couldn't accept it. He said he finished first. He said he used the perfect formula, and that's when the professor called him out. He mentioned the wind magic. He had known from the start. Hubert's face went pale. That's when Rain walked up and simply handed over his paper. The professor laughed, saying it was a shame they finished because he was really looking forward to expelling the pair. Rain just said, if someone can't use magic because of a little wind, they shouldn't be called a mage. The professor snatched the paper. The magic circle was wrong. Not wrong as in broken. Wrong in a different way. Rain had used a fan shape for one circle, and a standard shape for the other. Nobody did that. The professor asked why. Rain explained, it works better with the water attribute. If you meet the ancient rune requirements with a simple linear equation, the acceleration time kicks in. The professor was impressed that a regular student would know that. But he said knowing the theory was one thing. Actually doing it was another. So, he told Rain to prove it. The boy began to chant. The professor said he couldn't wait to see that ego deflate. The paper began to glow. Something flashed like a mana star cluster, and it began to rain. Inside the classroom, everyone was speechless. The professor began to clap slowly. 13 years of teaching. So many geniuses. But never, not once, had there been an answer like that. Srank. The guy had no reaction. He just walked past Hubert and said, next time, I won't let it slide. So, how did a kid with no achievements humiliate the top prodigies of the 8 great schools on his very first day? Let's rewind 300 years, to the tallest magic tower in the empire. There was a boy who didn't care for the world, Lin, the youngest mage in history to reach 4 stars, an orphan from the slums who was thrown into a tower of books and never left. His only goal was to reach 7 stars, the level where it said you can see the truth of the world. The guy was in a state of deep concentration until a silver-haired girl walked into his library, called his name 3 times while he ignored her, teased him for being a kid who couldn't handle her, faced a fireball, backed into a bookshelf, and got buried under a pile of books, and for the first time in years, he smiled. Her name was Esther, a pseudo-warrior with a modified body and a shortened lifespan. She knew she would die young, and instead of hiding from it, she recruited everyone she could to save the world before her time ran out. Lin asked if there was any fun in that. She looked him straight in the eye and said one word: the world. He didn't join to save anyone. He joined because she had made him curious. This was an insane, unbeatable lineup. Each member was the peak of their role. And even though Len was the youngest, it was clear he held unprecedented potential. You see all those smiles. Yeah, we know a tragedy is coming at the end of their journey. While they were in their final battle, the guy was hit with a rare abyssal poison. Something with no cure, no treatment. But he didn't give up. He carved an immortality seal into his own heart. His body froze. He promised Esther he would return. This magic would only be dispelled when the user's body was fully recovered. So, she held his hand and promised to wait while he froze solid like a block of ice. All this guy wanted was to find the 7th circle level and discover the truth. And now, 300 years later, a boy named Rain wakes up in someone else's body, steps into a public square, and sees 4 statues of the people he used to have dinner with, their dates of death carved in stone. So, at all, Rain wasn't some nobody who got lucky on a test. He was the original, the one who invented the formula the entire class was using, revered by all as the Holy Mage, but of course, he couldn't tell anyone. After class, Krista called out to Rain. When he asked what she wanted, she got a little embarrassed. "Thanks for earlier," she said. With a serious face, he asked her to say it again because he didn't hear her. Face beat red. She told him not to make it worse and said she would pay him back, so he shouldn't get cocky, because more than anything, they were rivals. While she was pointing her finger at Rain, a few people walked by, talking about how Professor Owen had given out his rank. They asked if it was for Hubert, but then someone said it was actually for Krista, which they thought made sense. They also mentioned that in the paired tests, Krista had teamed up with that famous academic genius. The next day at the academy, Rain reminded Krista about her promise to pay him back the next time they met, and asked what floor the girls' dorms were on. She told him his room was probably on the top floor because of his entrance exam score, and that she had warned him not to get too full of himself. He replied that full of himself or not, she was the one who said that breaking a promise makes you look shallow. Angry, she told him to just wait a little longer. As Rain entered the dorms, a guy muttered about him being the top student and the eldest son of the Wick family. Standing in front of a door, Rain wondered if this was really his room. With a charm in his hand, he opened the door. He then realized it was a private room. Walking over to the desk, he said the place reminded him of his time in the magic tower. Even in his past life, he'd been locked in a room, just like it, doing nothing but studying magic. For a brief moment, he thought of Esther. Laying down on the bed, he thought that aside from the first class, there wasn't much else to do. He wondered if he should sneak into the Vatican to find his remains, but infiltrating that place in this body would be difficult. Using a few magic circles, he tried to use a spell, but to his surprise, it failed. It seemed he wasn't ready for 4-star magic yet. Suddenly, an owl landed on his window, startling him. It dropped a wooden box. Rain noticed there was no sender and wondered if his father had sent it. Inside were 2 books, but he was stunned to realize one of them was the journal he had entrusted to Esther. After a second of thought, a shock ran through Rain's body. The person who sent this knew who he really was. At the outdoor magic training center, Krista was practicing her timing. As the seconds ticked by, she fought fiercely against a few monsters. Her friend, who was timing her, said there were only 15 seconds left and asked if something good had happened. Krista said nothing was different and asked why. Her friend said Krista seemed happier than usual. With 5 seconds left, the girl asked if it had anything to do with Krista meeting Rain. She wondered if something had happened between them, which made Krista flustered. Annoyed, Krista said nothing had happened. She was just frustrated about having to see his face every day, so she was blowing off steam during practice. Her friend, looking thoughtful, said Krista wasn't fooling anyone with that attitude. She guessed the rumor about Krista getting help from Rain during the exam was true. That surprised her, because the Rain she knew from her childhood wasn't like that. In the hall of the student dorms, the blonde guy from before walked down the corridor. Just then, a man who saw him pass by greeted him, calling him a C-rank loser. Everyone else ignored it because they already knew what this guy was like. Hubert turned and told him to stop picking a fight, or he might not wake up tomorrow. The man, whose name was Logan, told him to calm down, mocking him by saying he nearly pissed himself laughing when he heard someone got a S-rank. He added that, on top of that, a girl named Krista got an S-rank even with a dead weight dragging her down. Hubert just ignored him and walked away quietly. But as he was leaving, Logan brought up Rain again, asking if Rain was as cowardly as the rumors said, saying that even so, Rain was still better than Hubert. Without turning back, the blonde said that wasn't something a method should say, and, angered, asked if Logan was challenging him. Logan replied with a smirk that yes, that's exactly what he was doing. They started to glare at each other, but a red-haired woman stopped them. Without even looking up from her book, she asked if they were done, because there were other people here. Her name was Lillian, a research student at the academy. Logan told her not to worry. It was just a joke. He said he was planning on taking down Krista and Rain and asked if Lillian wanted in. Looking bored, Lillian said that's exactly why his magic progress was stuck. There was no gain from bullying weaker people. Hubert cut in, saying he would handle Krista and Rain himself. Turning, he said if the other guy interfered carelessly, He'd be the first one to go down. After closing the door, the other guy called Logan an idiot. He punched the wall, wondering what Rain had actually done. Rain had been working under Professor Scalzi for 3 years, and he had earned it. For someone who hadn't even had a rank, that should have been impossible. Meanwhile, in his room, Rain was reading the book that had been sent. The first part was about Lan's life. The second part covered the magic and combat styles he had used. Rain couldn't understand it. Even if someone knew who he really was, he couldn't figure out why they didn't just contact him. Seeing it was 11 p.m. He thought he should turn off the lights before the house manager showed up. Just as he was about to flip the switch, Rain glanced at the book, remembering the kid who had followed him. Suddenly, an Erudian leaped out from inside the book. Rain was shocked. It was rooting magic from the old A school. For a second, he thought it might be the one he had created in his past life, but then he realized it was at least twice as big. Still, the fact that it survived for 300 years was impressive. He wondered whose mana this was, and what it was for. For a moment, Rain remembered his old companions, and the Rudian landed on his hand, informing him that the progress of his unique magic research was at 37. Then a giant window opened in front of him. Rain was stunned because it was his old research, the one aimed at reaching the sage level. There were 12 original ancient runes he had tested in battle 300 years ago. He had assumed they all failed, but apparently, they were at 37. But then he thought that couldn't be possible with a 4-star spell, and wondered how the Rudian could track the progress of a 6-star spell. He grinned and brushed it off, thinking that if this was real, then he hadn't been wrong to stick to his path. And if he kept going, he might finally reach the truth. That sudden burst of hope made Rain completely forget about who sent the book. Putting on a robe, he decided it was time to get to work on his research. But as he stepped out of the dorms, he was met with heavy rain. Unlike in the north, where it gets cold when it rains, the southern region stays warm even in the rain due to the influence of the mountain range. Humming as he walked, Rain went on his way in the rain. When he reached a certain location, he wondered if there was really a place where he could freely practice magic. A woman with green hair said that for that, a battleground was perfect, and said she would guide him. According to the dorm supervisor, the battleground was a place to practice powerful magic with a vast space. Surrounded by high-level protection and recovery magic, you could use spells recklessly without a care. She said all he needed to do to enter was touch it with his student ring. When he did, the wall of fire opened, as if it were nothing. The system welcomed him, saying there were currently 30 empty rooms. Waving goodbye, the supervisor told him to use them as he pleased. Rain said he would take room 15. The request was approved, and in a flash, he was in an empty room. Rain requested a durable target, and a monster rose from the floor. Noticing it was a 2-star monster, Rain said it wasn't bad. Opening his book, he decided to start with the ancient rune, but when he shaped the rune into a triangle, it strangely broke apart. It seemed 1-star magic didn't work, so he clasped his hands together. And when he opened them, Rain used a spell this time with 3 triangular ancient runes. As if doing alchemy, he slammed his fist into his palm, creating a small explosion. It didn't do any damage to the monster, which really frustrated him. Hubert was watching from a distance, wondering what kind of garbage magic that was. He assumed it was 1-star magic, but the kid couldn't even use it properly. The whole point of fire magic was that it was loud, but this was so quiet it looked like it was still in the elementary stage. So, Hubert turned away, thinking the rumor about Rain being Scalzi's assistant must be false. Our protagonist continued to use the magic relentlessly until the monster started to crack, shatter, and fall to the ground. Sighing, the boy said it was a failure. The flame with the characteristic properties of you was supposed to seep into the TARDIS body and melt it from the inside. That was the effect he was aiming for, but it took 30 seconds to do that to a 2-star golem. He wondered if the symbol needed more refinement, or if the problem was with the mathematical theory. With a smirk, Rain thought he still had plenty of time to figure it out. No matter how many times he failed, Rain believed he could solve it. Continuing his research, our protagonist refined the symbol. The Rudian not only detected nearby magic but also summarized and reported the research done during the day. It was truly an invaluable helper. Then our boy noticed something. The research percentage had increased by 0.1. He wondered if it was because of the theory, or because the ancient rune was more refined. He thought maybe there was another meaning to practice like that, but decided not to overthink it. He still had plenty of time. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew towards him, making him curious. Rain realized it was Hubert, and thought he was just a rookie from Rahina Academy. Bats were swarming around the blonde guy. One lunged, but with a single punch, the monster was shattered into pieces. Moving quickly, The other guy continued to attack, and the rest of the monsters met the same fate. That impressed Rain. He thought Hubert wasn't bad, someone worth keeping an eye on. But then our protagonist noticed something strange about the other guy's movements. The scene shifts to the academy where the professor explains the procedure required to use a spell. It's divided into 3 steps. First, set up the circle. Second, inscribe the ancient runes. And finally, the mathematical calculations. Among those, a lot of mages struggle with the 3rd step because if there's an error in the calculations at any stage, it can cause a disaster. So, to prevent them from turning to charcoal or being blown to bits, the great mage Len created a mathematical formula called Len's determinant. He said he'd give them an example, and they had to solve it using Len's determinant. Since it might be too much for them, the teacher gave them 10 minutes and said the formula was made to be easy, so there shouldn't be any idiots who couldn't do it. Starting the timer, the instructor told everyone to begin. Looking at the paper he was given, Rain wondered who had passed down that formula because none of his classmates knew his formula. And besides, they had only just learned addition and subtraction. So, there was no way they could have taught it. However, one person came to mind, a kid who followed him around, calling herself his disciple. Our protagonist thought maybe the kid had shared the formula as something invented by Len, but he quickly dismissed the idea since it had been over 300 years. Just then, Krista called him, and Rain asked if she was having trouble, telling her to let him see. She said it was ridiculous for him to think that about her. Krista Warden, the great genius. Suddenly, the professor gave her a death glare, and she apologized, saying she wouldn't speak out of turn again. Rain asked what she wanted, and stammering a bit, she handed him a box. Seeing it was a rather fancy box, Rain asked what it was, and Krista said they were cookies. She said she made some with her free time after magic practice. Rain was about to ask why, but she cut him off and quickly said he was the one who said she owed him. Rain said, "Well, it seems you're more diligent than you look," but when he opened the box, he saw cookies that looked more like charcoal. Krista continued to ramble on and was completely caught off guard. Rain asked if she was seriously calling those cookies. Krista said yes. So, Rain asked if she had used mud instead of flour, which made her angry. The professor threw something at her, shutting her up. Meanwhile, a student said that Len was truly a genius for inventing a formula like that. Hearing all the praise from the students, Len, now Rain, felt like he was in a field of flowers. They said the mage might even be the reincarnation of an angel or a saint. Embarrassed, Rain begged them to stop in his head. Krista wondered why Rain's face was suddenly so red. She wondered if he was shy just because of a few cookies. And she thought that even though he always acted like he knew everything, deep down he had that side to him too. The teacher came over and said that for someone who didn't even come to class, she had defended herself pretty well, and asked if she was interested in a special session. Just then, saved by the bell, the teacher told them to hand in their papers. While they were looking at a board with the available clubs, Krista asked Rain which club he planned to join. Krista said she was going to join the Magic Volleyball Club because descendants of the magical bloodline must uphold their dignity by playing magic volleyball. Our protagonist asked if she was serious and she said that until recently she didn't even know that. Rain asked what volleyball had to do with dignity, and just as Krista was about to answer, he cut her off to ask about a certain item which made her mad, and he basically ignored her and walked off, saying he was going to check out the other clubs. Delay Academy offered a lot of clubs aimed at fostering interaction and competition among the students. That's why they were established. Among them were the Combat Magic Club, a club specializing in fire attribute magic, a club for festival and decoration type magic. The clubs consisted of students with the same goals or motivations, and they were funded for their activities, as long as the supervising teacher approved. That created a good environment for everyone to focus on their own research. There were a lot of interesting places Rain wanted to see, but with Krista following him, he couldn't concentrate. She kept yelling, trying to convince him to join the Magic Volleyball Club, asking if Rain's father had mentioned that those from the magical bloodline had to sign up. Rain said even if that were true, it wasn't an issue. Krista asked why, and Rain explained that his father wouldn't interfere with his decisions. Krista's friend said that couldn't be true because the volleyball club was a mainstream club, and he should join to honor the magical bloodline. Rain said it wasn't mandatory and that the Magic Sculpting Club caught his eye more. Plus, there was the local Magic Development Club. Thinking back, Rain recalled that in the past, people fought just to survive. But the world had become peaceful and gradually, people were able to do what they truly enjoyed. Esther once told him that by the time he grew up, the world would surely be a prosperous place. So, she hoped Len would be able to protect our lives. Seeing Rain lost in thought, Gertrude called him, asking if he was even listening. All of a sudden, Rain started walking without saying a word. When they asked where he was going, he said he was going to drop by the local magic development club. That confused Gertrude, who wondered if Rain knew that magic volleyball was basically an essential part of high-class mage social gatherings. Sighing, she said it seemed the glory of the Loic family, who had competed with the Page family for over 100 years, would end with Lord Rain. Then she realized something. If the eldest daughter of the Page family disappeared after a certain incident, and now the Loic family was falling apart too. With this intense, almost glowing rivalry, she said that if that happened, it would be the perfect time for a new heir led by Krista. But when she turned to find a girl, Gertrude noticed she wasn't there anymore. In disbelief, she wondered if Krista could have followed Rain. And sure enough, just as Gertrude suspected, Krista was following Rain, making up an excuse that she was curious about the local magic development club. As Rain was about to open the door, he heard an argument from inside. A guy said he couldn't accept the proposed conditions, with the other trying to justify it with the idea of the strong taking all under the club's rules. The arrogant guy was Logan with his usual smug look, telling the kid to hand over the room. Seeing what was happening, Rain asked who the guy was. Krista asked how he didn't know, and explained it was Logan, a junior from Shihak Academy. Rain repeated the school's name like a question. Sighing, she said it was a school specializing in martial arts. Logan asked if the kid really wanted to settle this with a duel, basically mocking him, asking if he even had the guts to fight him. Bashing the kid's club, Logan said a club like that wouldn't be missed. Who would even care about a local development club anyway? Watching like a nosy neighbor, Krista said that this happened a lot because clubs needed rooms to operate, and if you wanted to start a club when there were no empty rooms, you had to take one from another club. Rain asked so this was settled through a magic duel, and the girl confirmed, saying it was a clear and effective method. Changing the subject, the girl got a little flirty asking if he was going to sign up for the club, and Rain said he wasn't a fan of troublesome things. Back to the conversation between the two in the club room. The boy said that studying mathematics or making academic breakthroughs wasn't the only reason magic existed. Logan asked what that reason would be, and the boy said from the bottom of his heart that academic achievements had pushed magic forward. But agriculture and disaster relief were areas where magic hadn't really been used much. He said if they could find a way to use magic there, maybe they could easily solve problems like poverty. Logan replied, saying they definitely couldn't solve that with just magic. Pointing at him, the nerdy guy said the club was started by the seniors to do just that, and thinking about the people who were suffering right now, he couldn't just hand the club over to Logan. Hearing that, Logan burst out laughing and asked if the kid was serious, saying that if that was really possible, the great mages would have already done it. Grabbing him by the collar, Logan asked what a kid who couldn't even keep a club against a freshman thought he was going to do. With a smug smile, he asked if those so-called seniors had achieved any results all this time. That left the kid stunned, not knowing what to say. Then Logan continued, asking if he really believed in that prophetic research. He said that if the other guy didn't even dare to face him, then he must think it wasn't that big of a deal, and that was annoying. So, he asked what the kid thought about instead of helping someone he didn't even know, helping the person right in front of him. Still held by the collar, the kid said he couldn't do that. Logan remarked that the kid could barely even open his eyes from fear. Asking if the kid was even sane, Logan said there was nothing left to do but help him open his eyes. He was about to slam him on the ground, but Rain stopped him with an electric spell to make him let go. Radiating an aura, the protagonist asked if Logan wanted to have a magic duel with him instead of bullying that kid. Logan looked at Rain, wondering who he was. Noticing that, Rain said he had just joined the club as a new member. After a long and steady training session, the progress rate had gone from 37.1 to 37. In a rhetorical tone, Rain wondered if magic could really do everything. It's not that anything is possible. There are still things magic can't do. But I think it could create an oasis right in the middle of a desert. It could help travelers searching for water. He then remembered Esther, who on one of their trips asked him to create some spells that anyone could use easily to help those in need and make life easier. Logan stared at the protagonist who had just appeared out of nowhere with hatred. He then quickly changed his expression and said, "Oh, so you're the new member." He noticed something interesting. Behind Rain was Krista, and the boy's red eyes weren't unfamiliar. Logan walked closer, saying the kid had said something silly, and then immediately corrected himself, saying he had a bad habit of speaking his mind. Looking at the kid, he said he was actually on his way to greet him, but asked if he had really mentioned a magic duel. In an arrogant tone, he asked if he had heard correctly. Calmly, The protagonist said yes. That's exactly what Logan had understood. So, Logan said that if he was that eager, maybe he should give him a match. Laughing, Logan asked if Rain seriously thought he could beat him. Throwing the question back, Rain asked if he was scared. If so, Rain could give him a handicap by not using any magic during the duel, and if that still wasn't enough, Rain said he would only use 3 spells developed by that club. That confused Logan, and he asked if he was serious. Confidently, Rain said that Logan was basically saying he wouldn't lose no matter what. Hearing that, Logan said this wasn't just a failure, it was stupidity. He put his hand over his mouth saying he had misspoken again. He then asked if Rain knew it took 3 days before a new member was approved. So, at that point, it was basically just a personal challenge. Seeing what Logan was getting at, Rain told him to just get to the point. Turning to the club president, Logan said that if Rain won, he would give up that room, and if anyone came to mess with them, he would kick them out himself. But if Logan won, the kid would have to submit a withdrawal application. Logan laughed, saying that for some reason, ever since he met him, he had felt a huge, insurmountable barrier. Just then, Krista, who had been listening from outside, opened the door and asked if Logan was kidding because the deal was completely unfair. Fed up with her, Logan told the nosy onlookers to shut up. Agreeing with him, Rain told Krista to stay out of it. She asked if he understood what was really going on. Staring at Logan, Rain said he didn't need to understand because he was going to win. Rain told Logan he could pick the date and time. He would be ready whenever. Laughing, Logan said since Rain was so confident, he would get a teacher to be the referee. And since there was no need to drag it out, he said the duel would be on the same day at 6 at the Blood Dragon Arena. Walking past Krist, who was standing at the door completely stunned, Logan said he would be waiting for the kid. As he walked through the school, Logan remarked that he had caught a big one this time and that the headmaster and the elders would be very pleased. He thought that day was going to be a great one. Calling Rain, Krista asked if he had forgotten his position here, getting into a magic duel again. Opening a book, Rain nonchalantly replied that he was a college freshman. In a serious tone, she told him to stop messing around. Rain just ignored her and grabbed a few more books. Seeing that, she turned away, saying he could do whatever he wanted, and that she was an idiot for worrying about him. Watching her leave, Rain wondered why Krista was so angry. Getting up, the club president said that it didn't make sense. Rain was the one who did that. People from the magical bloodline didn't get into duels. Then Rain noticed something. The club president had a dragon ring with its wings spread, which was weird since he was only a sophomore. Brushing it off, Rain asked why he said that. The club president explained it was because there was more to lose than to gain and admitted he felt more confused than grateful, asking why Rain had helped him. Rain said he had no intention of helping him, but he did it because of a promise. The boy looked confused, but said he was grateful anyway. However, he said it felt like Rain was underestimating Logan. Hearing that, Rain asked if Logan was really that impressive. The boy explained that Logan was basically like a mage king. He had a big advantage over regular mages and specialized in long-range magic. On top of that, he had been in a lot of duels and his win rate was over 90. Sitting down, the nerdy guy said Rain had gotten himself into a reckless situation. All because he spoke without thinking. He said maybe he had gone a bit too far arguing with Logan, because honestly, it wasn't even that big of a club. Cleaning his glasses, he said he was born in a rural area, and the villagers had pooled their savings so he could afford tuition. So, he wanted to repay them somehow to make the village a better place to live. That's why he joined the club and started researching magic. But things didn't go according to his plan and the anxiety grew over time. He clung to it for personal reasons, and in the end, he got nothing. He asked if that was pathetic and said it felt like it was God's will that he should give up. Laughing nervously, the club president stood up and said he would be the only one to participate in this duel. Rain cut him off and with a serious face asked what was pathetic in all of that. Grabbing a book from the shelf, Rain said he was the one who accepted the magic duel and asked if he could borrow a few books on magic. As he left the club room, he said he would return them soon. The boy tried to stop him, and that's when Rain asked if he knew why the great mage Lan started researching magic. Confused, the club president asked why, and Rain said it was to survive. He said everyone starts researching magic for some personal reason. Out in the university hall, everyone was whispering as they saw Rain. Realizing the rumor had spread, he thought it was becoming a much bigger deal than he expected. Then he heard someone call him, saying they had finally found him. When he turned, Rain saw it was Alen. She was drenched in sweat and clearly exhausted, and she asked if he was okay. Without a hint of hostility, the boy greeted her. The next second, before he could say anything, she lunged at him and locked him in a headlock. She said she had barely slept because of him. Admitting she knew about the duel, she asked if she had heard wrong. Rain then admitted the rumors were true. That sent her into a fit of laughter. She said her lovely nephew had caused a whole scene, and that she needed a drink. Rain yelled that his head was going to explode if she kept squeezing. She let him go and said getting hit by Logan would hurt a lot more and that he was overreacting. She then sighed and Rain, slow as always, asked if she was worried about him. She snapped back and yelled, asking if she looked like a pathetic aunt who would worry and check on someone like him, telling him not to get the wrong idea, flicking his forehead a few times. She said he would only learn his lesson after Logan gave him a good beating. Ulin turned away and Rain apologized, saying he didn't realize it was something he shouldn't have done. However, he promised not to disgrace the family. His aunt said it had already become a matter of the family's honor, and because of what he had done, worst case scenario, he could be expelled. But it was fine, because she was really angry with the people who had laughed at him like he was useless. Turning back with a proud look, she said that since Rain started this, he better stomp that guy when the time came, because the name of the Lewick family was on his shoulders, so he needed to make sure no one would even think they could catch up to him. At the arena, the two of them stared each other down. Rain remembered his aunt's words, and thought that was his plan from the start. Anyway, at school, everyone was running to see the match. After all, a useless noble and the brood of Chihak were going head to head. A male teacher watched the duel and a female teacher asked who he was rooting for. Logan from her faction, or Rain, his student. The teacher said status, lineage, or affiliation didn't matter to him. He would only support the stronger one. That made her laugh heartily. She said she didn't expect anything less from him. The referee of the duel introduced himself as Theon. Since the magic duel was officially permitted by the school, the loser had to abide by any conditions the winner set according to the academy's regulations. After saying that, he told both of them to step up. With all the confidence in the world, Logan threw his cloak to the side and stepped up. Rain looked at him with pure disdain. The crowd commented that Logan was clearly well prepared, but they wondered if it was overkill for a husband noble. Krista was watching the match when she was startled by Gertrude finding her. Gertrude said, "So you were here, worried." Krista tried to make it clear that she wasn't worried. She was just there to enjoy the sight of Rain getting beaten to a pulp. Smiling, Gertrude said she knew. Elsewhere in the stands, the teacher thought about how it takes time for practitioners to cast magic. So, mages who could rush in and fight in close quarters were a real threat. She wondered how the boy would deal with that. Suddenly, both the teacher and all the students watching were shocked because Rain pulled out a broom from under his cloak. Logan said he thought it was some kind of wooden stick, but no, it was a broom. Everyone started laughing at him, asking if he was there to sweep the floor. Krista, seeing that, covered her face in disappointment. The referee asked what it was, and Rain said he had borrowed it from the library. Luckily, the cleaning had just been finished. Smirking, Logan asked if the kid was begging for mercy. Just a few hours ago, he was acting all confident, and now he shows up with a broom. The muscle mage said Rain should stop right now so he wouldn't embarrass himself further. Mocking him, Rain asked since when did mages start winning with words. Angry, Logan got closer until the ref stopped him, saying he was too close. The ref said he would confirm the terms before the duel started. If Logan lost, he would have to be a guard for the local development club until graduation. If Rain lost, he had to leave delay. The ref asked if they both accepted since there shouldn't be any objections after the verdict. At the same time, they both confirmed they agreed. Activating a spell, Theon said in that case, they should back away, because the duel would start in 10 seconds. The spell began to count down. Everyone rushed to see the match that was about to start. Helen's assistant asked if she needed to go see, saying she could handle the rest of the work herself, but Helen said she wouldn't go. Hearing that, the girl said Helen seemed unusually calm. Helen, annoyed, asked if she was saying she couldn't keep her cool. Nervous, the assistant said that's not what she meant. Looking out the window, Helen smiled, thinking that maybe Rain was the vessel of a sage. She then said there was no need to watch because the outcome was already decided. Finally, the countdown hit 0, and the ref gave the order to begin. And like the jerk he was, Logan ripped off the bandages still wrapped around him and told Rain to get a good look because once he left the school, he would never have the chance to see him again. Activating the secret art of the Chihak school, his body was enhanced and covered in veins. On the left side of his chest, there was an ancient rune. Hubert was watching in admiration of his activation speed since a small mistake could break bones or rupture organs. The teacher thought it was no wonder the boy was considered one of the top talents of the school. Holding the broom, Rain remained calm, and with veins popping on his forehead, Logan declared he would end the match in 10 seconds. Our protagonist sighed and the other guy charged at him. Everyone's eyes were wide, but Rain didn't move. Right before hitting Rain, Logan said that even if the kid could move, the outcome wouldn't change because the enhancement spell created a magical barrier on the surface of the body for defense, and it would explode at the point of impact to deal damage. There was no way to stop it. The only thing left was to crush the kid. But the moment Logan was about to strike, his arm was knocked back by the spin of Rain's broom. Logan panicked. There was no time to think because the next second he was hit by another spinning blow from the kid. The blow sent Logan flying into the air and everyone was stunned. The professor wondered if it was the staff techniques of the warrior school. 300 years ago, that technique had elevated warrior to one of the 8 great schools, a technique created by the great Mage Lin. Even mages needed to be able to fight in close quarters. And rumor had it that the mage had developed that technique with the help of the heroine Asura. The professor was dying to know how the heir to the Loic family had learned it. Just then, the blonde teacher realized something that left her in shock. The broom the kid was using didn't even break. If he had hit a reinforced body with a clean broom, the handle should have shattered. She thought maybe it was magic because, seriously, who is this kid? Rain sighed and the crowd cheered about Logan getting sent flying. Logan tried to get up and suddenly vomited blood. He couldn't believe it. His enhancement magic was broken by a broom wielded by a useless noble. Our protagonist looked down at him, asking if he said he would finish it in 10 seconds. Since beating up a promising junior wasn't fun, Rain said he would finish it in 6. Getting into a fighting stance, the kid said he was ready, and that Logan should come at him with all he had. Enraged, Logan got up and stomped his foot, cracking part of the arena, and making Rain lose his balance a bit. He then kicked up a few rocks and sent them flying, but Rain easily blocked them with the broom. But when he looked up again, our protagonist had lost sight of Logan. Looking behind him, Rain activated a spell on the broom, blocking an attack from the rear. What he didn't expect was for Logan to be above him, ready to deliver a kick. Logan came down and kicked Rain away. A cloud of dust rose, making the club president worried. But inside the smoke, we see Logan sinking into the mud. The man was wondering what had happened when he heard Rain's voice, saying it was a 1-star spell used for plowing fields. When Logan turned, he saw the kid standing on a pile of rocks, explaining that the spell could create a temporary dam during floods. Smiling, our protagonist asked if it seemed pretty useful. In the crowd, some people looked worried or shocked, while others seemed genuinely excited about the spells. The teacher, thinking to himself, noted that standing on a high platform, keeping a good view and a certain distance, was perfect for nullifying Logan's abilities. To him, Rain had seen Logan's attack, turned the ground to mud, and trapped Logan's legs. Everyone thought the match was basically over because Rain had clearly gained the upper hand. But then, from the top of the platform, our protagonist threw the broom he had been using as a weapon, and everyone was stunned in disbelief. That action even startled Logan, who looked up completely confused. Barista yelled at the kid, asking what he thought he was doing, saying he should have used a long-range spell, and finished it. Just then, Logan, still stuck in the mud, began to concentrate his power. And as the broom came down, the other guy launched himself like a rocket, shattering it, and charged at Rain with a punch. But just as he was about to hit Rain, Logan was stopped by giant roots our protagonist summoned. Everyone's jaw dropped because that spell could basically bring dead tree back to life. That's when Logan realized why the kid had thrown the broom, breaking off a part of the branch that was holding Logan. Rain said that as promised, he only used 3 spells, and he asked in that case if they should end the match. Realizing he was about to lose, Logan started cursing at him, thinking there was no way he could let himself lose so pathetically. He began to struggle, trying to break free. Seeing that, our protagonist wondered if he had put too much mana into it. But then he said, maybe it's just sticky because it's a vine, and considering the properties of the plant, and how easy it is to control, it still needs improvement. Rain remarked that Logan looked like he was in pain. However, he told him not to worry. He would feel more comfortable soon. Holding the branch, our protagonist pretended like he was about to stab Logan's eye. But at the last second, he swore, turned, and threw the branch to the side. Frustrated, Logan demanded to know what he was doing, because he said he would end the match. And before he could complain, Rain said the battle was already over. Since Logan had lost, he should shut up. Rain also said Logan now understood how it felt to be beaten down. So from now on, he should stop doing bad things. After that, our protagonist removed the platform and Logan, still trapped, realized that for the first time, someone had actually shown him mercy. Watching the magic dissipate, Rain said it had lasted for quite a while, and that spells seemed to have many practical applications. Bored, our protagonist remembered he still had to officially end the duel. One side had to surrender or be completely knocked out. And as Logan fell, Rain hit him with a wind spell. With smoke still coming off his fingers, the kid said the match had already been decided, so that shouldn't count as an attack. Then Rain looked at the ref, waiting for the announcement. Grabbing the walkie-talkie, the man announced the winner was Rain from the Lewick family. The moment the winner was announced, the crowd started screaming. Krista, who had been worried until that point, looked happy and relieved. Looking back, Rain noticed someone heading towards him, leaning against the wall. It was the club president, thanking Rain for everything and saying he didn't even know how to repay that kindness. Our protagonist asked what kindness he was talking about, and the kid tried to say something, but Rain cut him off, saying that even if they weren't perfect, he could feel the club president's determination in every spell he had used. And he said with certainty that the senior's efforts had not been in vain. Realizing he had said more than he should have, Rain apologized and asked if he could ask for something. Smiling, our protagonist asked the boy to continue making spells for local development enough that Rain wouldn't be necessary anymore. He said he believed the kid could handle it. And while the club president cried tears of joy, Rain left the arena, wondering what Esther would have said in that situation. But he figured he should stop thinking about it. After all, he wasn't Esther. Even so, Rain wondered if he had managed to keep a little bit of dignity. That night, in the dorms, Loden woke up to the sound of people talking about the match. They couldn't believe the outcome. After all, it wasn't every day that a useless noble be a genius like Logan. As he got up, the other guy had a massive headache. The professor standing by his bed asked how Logan felt after smearing dirt on the school's face. In a cold sweat, the kid tried to come up with an excuse, calling the professor Bade Bro. Gritting his teeth, the professor said that here he should call him Professor. That scared the kid and he apologized immediately. Sighing, the professor told Logan he should rest. Looking scared, the kid said if he did that, his big brother would probably get beaten up by the elders. Turning away, the professor told Logan he should stop pretending to be a genius, asking if he really thought he was special just because everyone treated him like he was an elite. In a shaky voice and with his head bowed, the kid said no. Then the professor asked what the boy knew about Scalzi Lewick. He explained that the Rivendell students said Rain was Scalzi's assistant for 3 years, leaving the kid speechless. The professor continued, saying that if the heartless Scalzi kept him by his side for 3 years, then Rain's skills were the real deal. Angered, Logan couldn't accept the eldest son of a family being like that. And ignoring everything his brothers said, he refused to accept it, vowing he would take the kid down the next time they faced off. Hearing that, the professor asked if he was an idiot, saying it seemed the kid's stubbornness didn't change even after getting beaten to a pulp. He asked what Logan even saw in the boy to call him a disgrace. Logan was the one who was defeated, and then had his life spared. However, if that was the only conclusion Logan could come to, his brother said he could do whatever he wanted. As he left the room, the professor reminded him to make sure he followed the betting agreement. Now alone, Logan convinced himself he wasn't scared of his brother, and that he didn't talk back out of respect. Rewinding a bit, 15 minutes before the magic duel with Logan, Rain was in Delay's central library, the largest in the Empire. He thought it was weird that Lion's biography and journal had been delivered to him. He asked the librarian where he should go to find books like the ones he had. And a moment later, she brought him 2 books, one on the life and achievements of the Archer Kais and one on the Fire Dragon Priestess Frey. Looking at the books, he remembered a bet he had with the priestess. With a smug smile, she said they should bet on whose biography would be thicker. But Len looked at her like she was ridiculous, asking why he would care about a ranking made by someone he didn't even know. The female mage tried to provoke him, asking if he was scared, because the bet was against the legendary priestess Frey. Like a kid, he was baited, and accepted, saying the outcome was obvious anyway. Esther, who was practicing with a rock on the tip of her sword, turned and said that in that case, she would bet on Len. Frey asked why she always bet on the boy, and Esther said it was the obvious choice. Walking up to Esther, Len asked what the real reason was, and with a smile, she said it was for a lot of reasons. Suspicious, our protagonist asked why she was dodging the question, so she finally answered. Because of her bloodline, her time was really limited, and she wouldn't live for long. Also, Thais was the oldest in the group, so he would probably be next. And Frey wasn't much different either. But Len was young, so she said that out of all of them, he would be the one to live the longest. And that's why his biography would be the thickest. So, Even if they didn't know what the future held, she hoped that one day they would get to see Len's biography. With the book in his hands, the boy thought about the irony since he was the one who died first. In his head, he congratulated the priestess on her win. Placing the biographies of his companions side by side, our protagonist realized Kai's was the thickest. Reading the archer's book, Rain was surprised after he had founded an archery school and trained a lot of disciples. The man had gotten married and had descendants. Smiling, the boy told himself that his friend seemed to have lived a happy life. Getting to the biography of the fire dragon priestess Frey, Rain started to notice something strange. There were no records after the year 1160 AD. It said she led the Republic for a long time as a priestess, but after that, no one knew where she went. She only reappeared in the year 1200 when the Witches' Association officially declared her dead, but that made Rain wonder, because for someone who loved being the center of attention, dying quietly like that didn't fit. However, he thought maybe it could happen. People change, right? He slammed the bookshelf, deciding there was no way. He knew Frey better than anyone, and an ending like that was impossible for her, so something must have happened. All of a sudden, an idea popped into his head, and he wondered if maybe she had disappeared because of someone else's actions. A mage who had saved the world disappearing in secret without anyone noticing. Stressed, he crumpled some pages, and thought maybe it was better to look for books from the Republic. Just then, a girl said that if he was looking for something about Esther's party, he should read that book, and she handed him a biography. He thanked her, excited, thinking it was a biography of Esther. But when he took it, he realized it was about the Ash Witch, Tirana, his disciple. That sent him into a spiral of thoughts until the girl who gave him the book asked if something was wrong. He said it was nothing, and thanked her for the recommendation. As he went through the biography, Rain wondered when that mischievous girl had become a witch. I mean, a witch who commands spirits is one of the highest ranks among witches. It's not something just anyone can become. So, he started thinking maybe she was the one who succeeded Frey. After reading for a while, he couldn't stop wondering how someone could live that long. It was hard to know whether to believe it or not. And with what he already knew about Frey, Rain thought he might need to find a book from the Republic. Just then, he heard the signal that the duel was about to start. He was still on the fence about whether he should go, but since he had talked big, he thought he had to. Getting up, he asked the girl if she could hold that book for a while. She said it would be hard to hold it if someone requested it, she'd have to hand it over. So, Rain said he would be back in 15 minutes. After finishing the magic duel with Logan, Rain rushed back to the library and noticed the librarian looked worried, as if she were looking for something. Looking at Rain, she asked if he had happened to take the book from before, which he denied. Rain asked if it had gone missing, and Karen confirmed, saying that when she finished her work and came back, the book was no longer there. Rain asked if maybe someone else had taken it, but the librarian said no. If an unregistered book was taken, the alarm would go off. Rain couldn't understand how that could have happened in such a short amount of time. Seeing how worried Karen looked, he didn't think she was lying. Karen apologized, because she had promised to keep the book safe. Rain told her it was okay. They could just buy a new one, and she should place an order as if he had lost it. She tried to refuse, but after Rain insisted a lot, she finally agreed. She said she was surprised that someone like him existed, and thanked him. In his room, Rain stared at the ceiling, thinking that recently people had been thanking him a lot. But even if it was a bit of a waste of time, for some reason, he didn't feel bad about it. He wondered if it was because his body had changed or because he had lived such a peaceful life. Either way, he knew he had to figure out how to solve these incidents. Because there were too many weird points like the journal he had trusted to Esther somehow making its way back to him. And on top of that, just as he started to look into his companion's pasts, Tina's chronicle disappeared. He wondered if it could be her, but then thought that was impossible since she had passed away and everyone he knew as Len was dead. Not knowing who was behind all of this was really getting to him. Picking up the book again, he strangely realized his progress had gone up. Rain wondered why, since all he had done that day was beat someone with magic. Then it clicked, and he realized he could increase the progress by using magic against other people. And that meant the door to the truth had to be opened with violence. But the guy's excitement died down and he started to think something about this couldn't be right. Our protagonist figured that even if power could rule the world, it didn't seem like something that worked with just force. However, when he used magic on a non-living target, it increased by 0. But when he used it against Logan, it had increased by 0. Thinking it over, he decided it was definitely worth experimenting with. The problem was that using magic on living people in school would be a big issue. So, he started thinking maybe he should become an adventurer. Rain pointed out that he would need money for books anyway, so it would be useful. The next day, our protagonist was surrounded by girls fighting for his attention. Grumpy as always, Rain said he wasn't interested in getting close to them and asked if they could go somewhere else, but they just assumed he was joking and started laughing. Two guys commented that it seemed Rain was a big hit with the girls, and that flirting like that in the morning was top class. Hearing that, he was just fed up with it all. Then Krista appeared, drawing the attention of all the girls, and told them to make way, and like magic, they all parted, and she could finally sit down. Whispering in Rain's ear, Gertrude said, "Maybe your real nickname should be the Lady Killer," giving a mischievous smile before leaving. Rain tried to talk to Krista, but she looked angry and told him not to talk to her. Rain asked why, and she repeated herself, asking if she had told him to stop bothering her. Giving up, he said he wouldn't bother her anymore. In his head, he wondered if it was because of the magic duel. Closing her book, she said she wasn't exactly mad because honestly, watching that fight was pretty satisfying. What really got on her nerves was that he had hidden his strength and acted weak while being really strong. And if someone was strong, he should walk around proudly because he had beaten Logan, and even her. Plus, thanks to what he did, she could finally face him without people saying she was bullying the weak. Pointing at Rain, she told him to get ready, declaring that the next time she would crush him until he was nothing but dust. Just then, everyone in the class noticed what Krista was doing and started whispering that it seemed the top student and Rain were having a face-off. They stared at each other, and our protagonist asked if she was really going to stand there because if she kept it up, she would get demerits in the teacher's class. She agreed, sat down, and thanked him for the reminder. Everyone in the room noticed how polite Krista was. Meanwhile, Gertrude thought that if Krista had spent all night practicing her declaration of war, she should have at least done it properly. That weekend at the Central Library, the librarian Karen told Rain there had been a problem. That made him a bit confused, wondering what had happened. She then said all the books related to Terrena were out of stock. When he asked why, she said she wasn't completely sure, but the interrogation unit of the Children of Gold sect had put them on the censorship list. So, he asked if that meant the witch had been declared a heretic, and Karen confirmed. Rain was confused because it was weird for someone to be labeled a heretic after they were already dead. He asked Karen if she had read the book and she said yes, because it was required reading for any librarian who was serious about their job. After all, it was written about the great Mage Lin and Frey's disciple, and it was full of stories. Rain was stunned, wondering if they were talking about the same person, and asked if there was anything strange in the book about black magic. She said she didn't notice anything out of the ordinary, and it read like a biography, and if there was anything like that, censorship would have filtered it out. Hearing that, Rain thought that only raised more questions. Sighing, he said that in that case, he would have to go to the black market, which confused her about his plans. He explained that you could find anything on the black market, from heretical books to magical tools corrupted by the abyss, so it would be easy to find books about Terrena. Karen said she was worried about how expensive it would be since something as rare as a censored item probably had a very high price. Rain thought that if that was the problem, it would be risky to get his family to fund a heretical book. The librarian said a book like that would cost on average 3 gold coins, something she could never afford on her salary. So, Rain realized that first of all, he needed to make some money. He started wondering if he should sell spells on the street or be a magic tutor. But both options paid too little for the time they took. In moments like that, Rain thought the only way was a high-risk plan with a big reward. And right then, the biggest gamble he could take was to earn money by risking his life. Quickly turning towards the exit, Rain thanked her, saying she had been a big help. That made the girl curious, and she asked where he was going. Rain said there was something he wanted to try. He admitted he was planning on becoming an adventurer so he could make some money while being stuck in this situation. Worried for him, Karen said that would be a disgrace for a lord from a prominent family, and that if he just gave her a little more time, she would figure something out. Rain said it was the fastest way to get the money. Sad that she couldn't stop him, she admitted she felt ashamed. The next morning, a strange man was asking about the name Rain Lui, which was on the list, saying he had borrowed Terrena's biography. Since freshmen weren't allowed to borrow books, he asked who had approved it. Then, the other librarian said Karen was the one in charge. When he asked where Karen was, she said it was her day off. So, the man asked if since she was new, maybe she had never received the book borrowing regulations, which the librarian said was possible. Another girl who worked there suggested maybe Karen had written the wrong name, because she could have mistaken Rain's name for Ellen's. She said Karen's handwriting was so bad it was impossible to tell if it was Ellen or Rain. And since everyone had been talking about Rain recently, Karen could have gotten confused and written it wrong. Plus, Karen had been caught having secret meetings with the boy recently, and people often make mistakes when they're in love. Hearing that, the man said that if that was the case, it was fine, and he would just change the borrower's name to Lin after the meeting. In the past, when people thought of adventuring, they immediately pictured brutal war, risking your life for money, rough people in taverns, things like that. But now, they seemed more like mercenaries who exterminated monsters. And if you were at the top, you were treated almost like a hero. Knowing that, Rain thought the world had really changed. As he entered the Adventurers Guild, he overheard some adventurers talking about trouble with spiders and rats and how high the reward was. He kept walking, keeping that in mind. At the counter, the receptionist asked what he wanted. Rain said he wanted to register as an adventurer. Judging by his uniform, she realized he was a delay student and asked if he had his student ID or some kind of identification. As he handed it over, he asked how long the registration took. And she said for delay students, it took less than 10 minutes. Looking closely at his ID, she noticed his last name and remembered it was a powerful noble family. Though, she wondered why someone like him would register as an adventurer. Rain asked if there was anything else he needed to do, and she handed him a paper, asking him to fill out the form and sign on the last line. He asked why, and she said it was a special clause for nobles. It stated that the guild was not responsible for any problems that occurred due to adventure work, and that meant Rain finished her sentence, asking if it meant some people had tried to blame the guild. The receptionist said she had heard it happened about 100 years ago, and that's why the clause was created. Handing him an iron tag, she said Rain's registration was complete. She explained it was his adventurer's badge and his current rank was iron. The next ranks went from bronze to diamond. And any combat experience or skills before becoming an adventurer would be reflected in your adventurer rank. That helped confirm if you were capable of completing a mission. Just as she was about to explain that he hadn't taken the ranking exam, the boy said he understood the basics and started to leave. She tried to stop him, saying there was still useful information, but he thanked her and said that was enough for now. So, the receptionist told him to take care of himself and that as his rank increased, the level of missions he could take would also increase. Now officially registered as an adventurer, Rain thought he could finally start collecting rewards for killing monsters and entering dangerous areas. Currently, he only had 44 silver coins. So, he decided to start by hunting some rat spiders. Since they were worth 2 silver coins per kill, he thought they must be pretty weak. In that case, the only option he had was to catch a whole bunch of them. Leaving the guild, he arrived at a mountainous area with a Japanese-style gate. Rain remarked that this place had changed a lot too. In the middle of the city, there was a crowd he gathered around a man who was supposedly selling life-extending medicine. As he walked, the boy thought that the dragons must have died, and that's why the monsters had gotten out of control. As Rain was leaving, the man called out to him, asking him to get a potion since there were a lot of monsters past that point. But the boy refused. After walking a bit further, he reached a staircase and realized the steps leading to the fire dragon shrine were still there. Looking at the stairs, he remembered the time he went there with his companions. To himself, he said the mage's hometown was safe. Stretching, he said the mage should watch closely as he exterminated all the pests on that land. Just then, a woman with long green hair appeared and caught Rain's attention, asking if he was a mage. She told him to stop hiding, because he couldn't fool her, creating a weird atmosphere. Rain replied that he wasn't hiding. He asked if it was obvious he was a mage because of his uniform. Embarrassed, she told him to just ignore it. She asked him to join her party because they needed a mage. Rain was surprised to hear she had a party, and she started to introduce the members, pointing to a giant man standing behind Rain. She said that was Bart, a super reliable silver rank vanguard. Rain asked if she was kidding because no matter how he looked, that guy didn't look human. Hearing that, the woman said he was being rude, and that despite his appearance, Bart was actually a softie. She then introduced Sammy, the party's apprentice priest, who gave off a calm vibe, and said it was nice to meet him. Finally, the girl introduced herself as Rum, a genius archer, and striking a Team Rocket pose, she declared they would do their best. Rain asked if they were seriously trying to recruit adventurers looking like a criminal gang. Rum asked who he was calling a criminal, and he said they looked like a group of human traffickers trying to kidnap people. Just then, Bart, looking angry, said that if Rain wanted a fight, he could bring it, which scared the boy. But then the unexpected happened. The giant, unshakable warrior started to cry. Rum tried to calm him down, saying it wasn't the first time they had been misunderstood. Scratching his head, Rain asked why they wanted an iron rank like him. Confused by the question, Rum explained that rank didn't mean anything to them. They could judge people just by looking. With a bright smile, she said he looked pretty strong. That attitude reminded Rain of his old companion, Esther. She also said Bart didn't want Rain to go alone down a mountain path full of monsters. Sammy added that young students often get into accidents trying to earn money in that area. The group said they didn't want to force him and told him to be careful if he wanted to go alone. After thinking for a bit, Rain thanked them for the advice, but left, saying he preferred working alone. Sighing, the party leader said it was a shame, but there was nothing they could do. However, she said he would be fine, telling Bart not to worry so much. As Rain walked away, Rim said they should start hunting rat spiders since she had found their whereabouts. Just then, someone tapped her on the shoulder, cutting her off. It was Rain, drenched in sweat, and introducing himself. He said he was willing to join the party. And with that group, Rain set off to exterminate the rat spiders. Elsewhere, we see the spiders feasting. In the middle of the forest, a rat spider was chewing on a branch. Then it heard a noise. It was Rain's group wondering if rat spiders really existed since they hadn't seen any signs of them around. Bart asked if the kid was okay with them splitting the profits equally, and the kid said that sounded fair. They asked if this was Rain's first adventure and if he knew what those spiders were like. The kid said no, and asked if they could explain. That's when the priest explained that rat spiders were creatures with a rat's head and a spider's body, and their colony consisted of the queen, the soldiers, and the workers. The workers were omnivores and ate plants while the soldiers attacked humans. Hearing that, Rain asked about the queen. The young priest said that wouldn't be necessary since they weren't going to hunt at this time. They were just going to exterminate the soldiers, and the queen, who rarely came to the surface, would be left alone. That was the basic plan. Rain asked why they were leaving the queen alone, and if it wouldn't be better to exterminate all the monsters at once. Bart said the queen wasn't even as big a threat as the soldiers. If they tried to catch the queen, it would require a whole campaign that would cost a lot of money. So, they started with the soldiers because those were the ones messing with daily life. With a sly smile, Rain said that if it was that difficult, the reward for catching it must be huge. As she walked through the tall grass, Rim told him not to even think about it because the queen was a formidable opponent, even for high-level adventurers. Just then, the girl got excited about something she spotted, as if she had found what they were looking for. Jumping down a slope, she yelled that she had finally found the rat spider's hunting ground. While still in midair, Rim fired a few arrows, taking down 2 of the monsters down there. Wasting no time, the warrior followed her and took down 2 more rat spiders. The guy with the ponytail told them to follow him, saying he had seen a huge swarm of rat spiders. Rim said they must have caught their scent. As they fought, the girl told Bart they should finish this before the others showed up. And the warrior agreed. Watching Rim and Bart fight, Rain asked the priest if it was really okay for him not to fight since they were splitting the money equally. While rummaging through his bag, the priest said all they needed to do was set up a campfire and prepare drinks for the camp. Rain asked if that was really all, and the young priest said the 2 of them never planned for him to fight in the first place. Rain said he didn't understand why they had posted a request, and Sammy explained it was because they really just wanted to help. Sammy said they responded as soon as they heard Rain needed money for the priest exam. Even after they had earned enough, they kept going. Being around those 2, he could feel how much they cared. Rain asked if it was like unconditional love and said it sounded like something God would be pleased to hear. Smiling, the priest agreed. The young priest said that although he didn't really know why, he felt a sense of unity that couldn't be explained by God. He thought you could call it a simple desire to be with others. Sammy said he had had a lot of fun adventuring with them and that the days they spent together made his heart feel completely full. Realizing he had been talking a lot, he apologized for rambling and said that as a priest, it was a bit embarrassing. Rain said he agreed. It was really nice to travel with someone. He remembered when he used to travel with his companions, and that made him think of Terraina. Rain then asked if Sammy happened to know anything about Terraina, and the young man asked if he meant the Ash Witch. While the others continued to fight, the priest said there was no way he could know, and Rain asked if the witch was captured by the church for heresy. He said it felt like it had happened, and at the same time, like it hadn't. Just then, the man with purple hair, who had been hunting the rat spiders, came face to face with a giant monster. In the forest, everyone heard his scream of agony. The adventurers wondered what the hell that was. Bart rushed to the scene, thinking this was insane. Seeing the giant creature with the adventurer in its mouth, Rim asked if that was real. In a cold sweat, they yelled that it was the queen. That's when everyone realized that by some twist of fate, the queen, who almost never came out, was on the surface. Worried, Rain asked why the queen was on the surface, and Sammy, unusually calm, said that the spider looked twice as big as a normal queen. Sammy explained that its size was due to the monster being left alone for a long time. All of a sudden, the queen raised its head and started to scream, causing a sharp pain to anyone who heard it. Everyone started to run and Bart tried to warn them not to turn their backs on the monster, but they didn't listen. The soldiers noticed the queen scream. Seeing that, Sammy told Rem and Bart they needed to retreat. Rain asked why since it was just a big monster, but the priest said it wasn't that simple. Because when the queen appeared, the rat spiders gathered in groups of 6, so rookies weren't enough to take them down. Just then, the rat spiders started to attack all the adventurers there, including Rem. She defended herself and also hit a rat that was about to attack another adventurer. Bart reminded Rem that fighting the soldiers was useless and that they needed to aim for the queen. Rem said she knew. Looking at the other two, the party leader told the priest to take care of the rookies and asked Rain to protect the priest. Using 4 arrows at once, the green-haired girl shot them at the queen with perfect skill. Seeing that, the protagonist realized it was Kai's technique, simultaneous precision shot. A few rat spiders charged at the archer, but Bart protected her, blocking them with his axe. The warrior charged at the queen and after a jump, embedded his axe in it. The adventurers who saw that cheered, saying they had taken down the queen. But then something rose from the black ink like blood. Noticing that, the protagonist told him to get away from it, or he would die. Bart jumped back and just then, the liquid shot out. Everyone wondered what it was because it looked like it was alive. The queen, which looked defeated, pulled the axe from its head and threw it aside. That's when Bart realized the axe had melted. Then the queen started to rip out its own eyes, growing new ones in their place. Suddenly, it turned to Bart, who was standing frozen in front of it. While taking down some soldiers, Rem thought this was really bad. Calling Bart, she told him to run, but he was paralyzed and could do nothing but get his arm bitten by the creature. Seeing her companion in distress, Rem ignored the soldiers attacking her and declared she would defeat the queen no matter what. Shooting an arrow at the spider's temple, Rem asked if it was going to keep ignoring her. As if kicking garbage bags, she started to throw the soldiers away. The priest called Rain, telling him to leave him there and join the attack. But Rain stood frozen, remembering the time he was poisoned and looked at the spider. He thought it was definitely black magic, so there must be a black mage nearby. Sammy grabbed Rain's shoulder, asking what he was doing just standing there. Rain said he couldn't use attack spells, and there was no one else here who could fight. Worried, the priest begged Rain to save his companions' lives. In a cold sweat, Rain looked around and saw his teammates being taken down by the monsters one by one. With tears falling, he asked how much they got for killing the queen. As the monster bit him, the priest said it would be about 20 gold coins. That was worth 1,000 rat spiders. Hearing that, the protagonist said that wasn't bad. Then Rain hit the queen with a stick, which exploded when it hit the monster. Everyone was shocked. Facing the creature, Rain provoked it, saying he would finish it himself. Using a lightning spell, he created a giant beam of light, blinding everyone nearby. The queen, which was holding Rem and Bart with its legs, threw them away, and radiating an aura, the protagonist told the priest to take care of Rem and Bart. Rain called out to the 2 onlookers, saying that if they wanted to survive, they needed to protect Sammy. Staring at the creature, Rain said he would take it down himself. The monster had lost a leg, but it didn't seem to affect it at all. So, the boy, determined, charged at the monster while using a spell. He destroyed some soldiers on his way. Sammy was worried for him, but all he could do now was take care of the injured. Facing the queen, Rain threw a fireball, hitting the creature's neck. The monster tried to counter, but the protagonist slid under and started to form a 3-star magic circle. Just as he was about to use the spell, one of the creature's legs stopped him, nearly hitting him. Since there was no guarantee a 3-star spell would work, and the magic he could use was limited, he told himself he needed to stay calm. So, he decided he had to evaluate the enemy first. Activating Belsius. As he looked at the creature, he realized it was 3-star black magic. One of the soldiers tried to attack him, but Rain easily dodged. Summoning a magic rope, he thought that with that concentrated level of black toxin, his current body wouldn't be able to handle it. So, if he couldn't block it with Belsidius, he would have to use 4-star magic. And since the black mage could be nearby, the risk was huge. This was a mess. He didn't know what to do in that situation. Despite being badly injured, Rem managed to stand up. Worried, the priest told her she should lie down, because the wound was serious, but she said she was fine. The priest tried to argue, but she cut him off, asking him to take care of Bart for her. One of the soldiers tried to attack her, but even while struggling, she took it down. The other guy asked if Rem was okay, and she told him not to worry about it. He should deal with the rat spiders. With Rain there, the guy thought nothing would work, so they needed to retreat now. Just then, something hit the tree next to the boy. Looking closer, Rain realized it was one of the soldier's eyes. When he understood what that meant, he was horrified because the queen was killing its own children. Noticing Rain was on a tree, the queen threw one of its creatures and knocked him off. But even while falling, the poor guy wasn't left alone. The spider charged at him, and he was forced to defend himself, summoning an earth barrier. Facing the creature, he thought this was the end. But then, an arrow flew towards the queen and hit it right in the eye. Stunned, the protagonist could only watch. The queen pulled the arrow from its eye and Rem said she had warned it not to ignore her. Enraged, the spider charged at the girl. Sammy yelled for Rem to run, but she thought she just needed to hold on a little longer. The monster continued to attack, relentlessly. Rain muttered that this was bad as he used another lightning spell, pulling a dagger from his leg. Rem told Rain to mind his own business and charged at the creature. She knocked the queen to the ground and asked if he was going to finish it. Almost in tears, Rain told himself he had to stay calm. Hiding behind a rock, he thought he could deal with it without being noticed. Then Rain started to concentrate, forming a circle made of multiple triangles. After kicking the queen, Rain felt a bit dizzy, and just dodging the attacks was tiring enough, but she had to try a little harder. But suddenly, everything around her went gray, and she passed out without wasting a second. The queen threw her away. The priest tried to help her, but he was blocked by the onlooker who was supposed to be protecting him. Meanwhile, Rain, still behind the rock, continued to focus on his spell. Taking advantage of some soldiers being distracted while attacking the onlooker, Sandy broke free and ran to him. The protagonist vomited blood from the effort of completing the spell. Just as the queen was about to finish off Rem, the priest appeared, dodging the blow with the girl in his hands. That shocked everyone, even the creature. Its eyes widened. Rem asked Sammy what he thought he was doing. Grabbing her collar, he said they had to get out alive so they could keep smiling. So, she needed to stop doing reckless things. She apologized, and leaning on the priest's shoulder said that when they got back, he would have to write a report. He agreed, and as they both faced the queen, she told him to get ready. The queen prepared to attack, and they both braced themselves. But then the unexpected happened. Rain's spell was finally ready. He launched a giant fireball, taking down the creature. That spell was made up of 4 layers of triangles. The ancient runes used for the inscription were angle, rule, bind, and finally, scatter. Then, the math to solve it consisted of 14 polynomials and 7 rational functions. The coordinate equation calculation was completed along with the power equation calculation. Then, he activated the last circle, scatter, creating a final pillar of fire that incinerated the queen. Everyone ducked to shield themselves from the flames. And when they looked up, they saw the queen had basically been turned to charcoal. Leaning against a rock, Rain remarked how pathetic he was. After all, in his past life, he could use that spell 7 times in a row without any problems. Along with the wind, the queen's ashes flew through the air. The rat spiders that looked so angry a moment ago were now just scared rabbits. The adventurers noticed, and said they couldn't let them get away. When it was finally over, the priest ran to Bart, who was lying on the ground. Looking at what was left of the queen, Rem thought about how that terrifying creature had taken him down with a single blow. When the priest got to Bart, he said he would heal him. And Rem said she was feeling dizzy. She asked how the warrior was, and Sammy said the guy was strong, so he would recover without much trouble. Looking at Rem, Bart apologized and asked if she was okay. She said she had received the necessary treatment, so she would be fine, and he shouldn't worry. After all, they were just unlucky in that fight. She added that it was weird for the queen to have regenerative abilities like that since there was nothing about it in the guild's database. But even so, the boy still managed to take it down in one hit. As night fell, the group rushed to help Rain. The mage said the kid's condition was due to mana overload. If so, Rem said he probably burned through all his mana in that final attack, but why Rain had hidden still puzzled Rem, so she assumed that since the queen was nearby, he needed cover. Sandy said they should talk about it later. For now, they needed to focus on saving him, and she agreed. Meanwhile, Rain, unconscious, remembered when he was Lin. Surrounded by his companions, he asked not to be officially recorded as a member of the hero's party and to report that to His Majesty. An old man said he didn't understand why the boy would ask that since it was something His Majesty had prepared to honor those who had contributed to humanity. Esther asked if he hated them and said if he was joking again, he needed to stop calling him a troublemaker. Confused, the protagonist said it wasn't like that, and that he was just different from all of them. That made Frey's face tense and she demanded to know what he was talking about. But then Lion cut in, saying he didn't carry a destiny like Kai's or Frey. He didn't even have a mission to complete like Esther. And he didn't start this journey for anyone else. He did it purely out of personal curiosity. Joining was just a coincidence. So, Lin said he wasn't worthy of having his name recorded, because he couldn't disgrace them. Hearing that, Kais put his hand on Lin's head and everyone started laughing, saying he was funny for worrying about that. Annoyed, the boy said, "It's not worry. It's just a highly logical conclusion." Then Esther held his hand and with a calm expression said that no matter what anyone said, he was part of their group. So, he didn't need to think about sacrificing himself, he should just do what he thought was best. After all, this world already recognized him as the great mage of the hero's party. When Rain woke up, he was in the middle of the city. Being carried by Bart, he asked where they were, and Rome was surprised he was finally away. She said they were on their way to the school. Sighing, Rain felt his whole body ache. He thought maybe he had overdone it, but he was still glad they weren't caught by the black mage. Bart asked if Rain was the one who had summoned the fire magic earlier. Rain thought for a second, noticed Rim said he shouldn't lie. They were already sure it was him. A little reluctantly, Rain said he wasn't trying to hide it. Hearing that, she muttered that it really was him. They said that since they thought he would keep it a secret, they had reported that they had used a scroll, then asked if he wanted them to correct it, but Rain told them to just leave it as it was. Since he seemed to have his reasons, Rim said she wouldn't ask any more questions. And since he was the one who saved them, they would definitely pay him back. Our protagonists said no. But the moment the priest said he should keep all the reward, he immediately said yes. Rim looked at the kid like, "Really?" And he asked why she was looking at him like that because, come on, he had earned it. She agreed, but said she had expected him to say he would dedicate the reward to all the people who had worked hard and share it fairly. Rain said she was dreaming a bit too much, so everyone started to laugh about it. The boy admitted he was just kidding, and said 5 gold coins was enough for him, but Bart said to be fair he should keep it all. Rain tried to argue, but Rim cut him off and suggested the kid should use his connections and turn this into an opportunity. She asked what he thought, and he agreed, saying it was a good idea. Then the priest asked if he had asked about Tina earlier. Our protagonist said yes and asked why. Sammy said he had overheard something when he was in the church area, so it might not be accurate, but from what he heard, the witch had been involved in black magic in her later years. Rain said goodbye to Rim's group with a smile. But after everyone left, his face turned serious, and he thought that it was clear the girl had really been involved with black magic. At the library, Rain flipped through a book, resting his chin on his hand. He closed it, thinking there wasn't any mention of Terena being involved in black magic. Staring at the book in his hands, he had another flashback from when he was Lin. Lin threw an old book to the side. Gripping his staff, the boy made his way towards a ruined place in a village in the abyss. Inside an abandoned house, half submerged in a swamp, they had found Terena. At that time, she was 7 years old. With a snap of his fingers, Lin created a temporary bonfire from pieces of wood and torn book pages. He said that would be enough. Then the girl started to cough. Lin turned and slowly walked towards her. Terena looked terrified and Lin took something out of his pocket. Her fear vanished when she realized it was food. Holding out the loaf of bread, he asked if she wanted some. He told her not to worry. It wasn't poisoned or anything. The rest of the group came closer and Lin asked if she wasn't going to eat, saying it was all he had, but she remained silent, and Lin sighed. Then the girl finally burst into tears, saying her mom, her dad, and everyone she knew was dead. Hearing that, Lin asked if her village had any contact with the outside world. She said she didn't really know. And Lin got up and said he understood. He didn't even know a village like that existed. But he said that maybe now she was the only one who remembered that village and its people. He said it sounded lonely. A life that no one remembered. He then asked if she was okay with that because if she died, that place would disappear without a trace. Almost in tears, Tina clung to his clothes and said she didn't want that. Lin got closer and said, "In that case, you need to eat." He gave her the bread and said even if she didn't want to, she had to eat to survive so she could remember the people who lived there. That was something only she could do. Then the girl started to eat, as if her life depended on it, because it did. As she ate, tears streamed down her face and from that day on, Terena started to follow him everywhere. The kid had a talent for magic, but Rain said he never intended to turn her into a great mage. All he taught her were the spells she needed to survive. Even after they finally went their separate ways, she always studied hard, never complaining. They practiced putting out small fires with water magic, and saving people from falling with earth magic. Every spell was aimed at helping others. Sitting around a campfire, Frey asked if Len liked teaching younger kids, and Esther asked if that was true. He told them to say something that made a little sense. Watching the girl practice her magic, he wondered if what he felt was empathy or compassion. Maybe he felt a connection to her because her circumstances were somewhat similar to his past. The day to leave Tina at the church came. Even though her expression was grim, she surprisingly said goodbye without causing a scene. Esther said that staying in that town would only make things harder, and they should leave quickly. Lin agreed. In his thoughts, the boy just hoped Terena would be okay. A man was showing her around the house, saying it might feel big at first, but she would get used to it soon. The girl, looking miserable, remained silent. Noticing that, the man tried to reassure her, saying she didn't need to worry about anything because from that moment on, they would be her family. That's when Terena, who had been silent, finally spoke and said that wasn't her home. She created a magic circle made of squares and added that they weren't her family, only her master was. An old man in a black robe came down the stairs and told the priest that the child's admission was complete. The man panicked when he saw the priest pinned to a pillar by vines. Asking if the kid did that, the old man told them to send a pursuit team. Smiling, the priest said he was fine and there was no need for a pursuit team. They should just let her go. The old man tried to argue but gave up. Sighing, the priest remembered the moment the girl trapped him. He asked what she thought she was doing and told her to let him go. Terena apologized but said that the place she needed to be was by her master's side. The priest remarked to the old man about how great youth was, and the old man replied that the priest was quite lenient. While walking with his group, Lin suddenly heard someone call him. When he looked back, he was stunned. It was Terena, exhausted, running towards them, calling him master. The protagonist asked how she got here, and she explained she had escaped using the magic she learned from him. Kneeling, she begged him to take her with him, promising she wouldn't be a bother. Lin looked at Esther, seeing what she thought. He finally agreed, but said they couldn't be together until the end. He also asked about her escaping with magic, if she had hurt anyone. She said no, so Lin said it was fine, and reminded her that magic should never be used to harm others. And that's how Terena joined the hero's party. As they traveled together, the girl's talents started to bloom. Even though she was reckless, she was the real deal. While practicing with the others, they noticed her potential and started to teach her in different ways. Tina was like a sponge, absorbing new spells and skills quickly. She seemed a bit shy at times, but her abilities improved rapidly. And once she reached the point where she could deal with strong monsters, they officially accepted her as part of the group. One night around the campfire, Esther came with a few gifts for the girl. It was a new dress, and it made her so happy. Touching Terena's shoulder, Frey pointed at Len, who was holding a straw hat. The girl thought it was a gift for her, but Len pulled it back, saying it was his. As the journey neared its end, during the Battle of the Abyss, she had become strong enough to be a real help. In a ruined tent, Len told her she had to stay there. But she insisted on helping, saying he knew what she could do, and that she could fight. Just then, Esther appeared, and said she agreed with Len. They couldn't take Terena with them. The girl called out to the other members of the group, asking them to say something, but they both remained silent. Upset, she said they had been together for so long. Were they really going to leave her behind now? Lin said she was still a rookie, and the enemy they were about to face was too dangerous. Plus, they had started this journey with just 4 people. So, it should be the 4 of them who finished it. Stroking her hair, Lin told her not to worry. They would definitely come back, and then he would teach her more magic. She swallowed her tears and said she would keep waiting for them. Lin smiled, and they set off. And that's how their adventure with her ended. Terrain, none of it made sense, because the girl would soon get involved in black magic. It was suspicious that the books related to Terena had suddenly been put on the censorship list. Rain opened the book and the ruby landed on his forehead, informing him that the progress of his research had gone from 37 to 39. Then, he was happy, but it was weird that exterminating the rat spiders had only increased it by 2. So, he thought he still had a long way to go. On the last page of the book, there was a drawing of Len. Right below it, the girl had described him as the best master in the world. That made Rain smile. He was about to say something about her. But then, all of a sudden, the smile vanished. The sun was rising over the place where the battle against the rat spiders had taken place. People in blue robes looked annoyed, saying they thought it might attract the golden kids and reduce the number of adventurers because the heat from the flames was still there and because of the blast radius. Someone else suggested it must have been a spell of at least 4 stars. And if what the people they interrogated said was true, that meant the adventurers, Brum and Bar, had been there. The more impatient one swore they would get revenge. But the calmer one said that would only attract the attention of the golden kids. Then the other said they just had to make sure they weren't caught. The calmer one said there were more important things to do before getting revenge. And the hot-headed one asked what that would be. So, the calmer one said they should inform Terraina first. When he got to the school, right in front of the club room, the protagonist was greeted by 2 students who asked if he was okay. He said he was fine and they shouldn't worry. At the front of the room, the club president said they were about to start and asked everyone to sit, adding that the number of members had increased a lot. The boy introduced himself as Joan, the president of the local magic development club, and said he honestly didn't expect so many people, but he was really happy. Joan said he hoped they would get along. He was about to start explaining the club's purpose and goals when someone entered the room. The boy turned back, still saying the club's goal was to develop magic for local development, but he was stunned when he saw who it was. Everyone was shocked because it was Logan. After a moment of silence, the man introduced himself as Logan and said he hoped they would get along. A little nervous, Joan said he had come at the right time. Waving, he told Logan to sit, but Logan was stunned when he realized the only empty seat was the one next to Rain. The protagonist, smug as always, pointed to the seat next to him with a sly smile. When everyone was seated, Joan decided they needed to start with a fresh mindset and asked them to take good care of everything. Rain remarked it seemed Logan really kept his promises and Logan said he just followed the rules. While Joan was explaining, the protagonist was lost in thought. He wondered if he could beat the black mages if he had to face them. Summoning his Rudian, he saw he only had 12, 0 mana and 311 stamina, so he thought he needed to train his body quickly. But he couldn't just train randomly. It would be better if he had someone who could guide him. Then Rain finally thought of Logan, who was basically perfect for that. Later on the training ground, Rain was suffering through Logan's training. During the session, Logan remembered when the kid asked him to train him. Logan said he didn't understand why Rain was asking that. After all, Rain was the one who beat him. So, what was the use of learning from someone who had lost? The protagonist said Logan shouldn't hold a grudge and said Logan was like the face, the next generation of the Musclehead crew. That made Logan angry, veins popping on his forehead. He said he had lost the duel, so he deserved to be ignored. But he also said there was no reason for the kid to badmouth his school. Rain scratched his head, confused, and sighed, saying he wasn't free enough to go around mocking people. Closing his book, the protagonist said that since Logan seemed to be misunderstanding, he would be more direct. Pointing at him, Rain said Logan was strong, so he wanted Logan to help him with his physical training. Plus, he wasn't mocking him. He was just asking, because he was genuinely surprised that someone at that age could be so strong. Logan appreciated that, but at the same time, he was confused about what Rain meant by at that age. The protagonist said a healthy body was the most important basic foundation, but he didn't have that. So, he planned to train properly, or he would just be wasting his time. So, he asked if Logan thought it would be better to do it with the guidance of someone who actually knew what they were doing. Logan sighed and agreed with the kid, saying there probably wasn't anyone more qualified than him in that area, but he said he couldn't teach Rain, so the kid should find someone else. Thinking the problem was money, our protagonist tried to offer a large sum, but Logan refused, saying that wasn't the reason. The kid was from the magic nobility, and Logan was from one of the 8 schools. Though, in his opinion, they were enemies. And enemies shouldn't support or help each other, which made the kid look annoyed. Rain called him, and the moment the man turned, the kid had an attack magic circle pointed right at his face. Making a bang sound with his mouth, the kid dismissed the spell. He said Logan was lucky because if he had wanted him dead, he would be. Rain asked if Logan knew why he didn't do it. And with smoke coming from his hand, our protagonist explained it was because Logan wasn't his enemy. They weren't soldiers, they were students, and this wasn't a battlefield. This was a place to learn. He said there was no reason for them to be enemies because they were classmates exploring the same field of magic. After thinking for a bit, Logan agreed, surprised that he didn't expect the kid to make such a solid argument. Back in the present, melting on the floor, Rain was calling Logan. He said he was finally done, and Logan said the kid was doing surprisingly well. The kid asked if Logan finally believed he was serious and Logan said yes, then told him they should move on to the next exercise. Our protagonist complained, asking him to help him up, and the man said he needed to get up on his own. Logan asked what would happen if someone saw them working together because both the nobility and the schools would be after them. Hearing that, Rain asked if the other guy's muscles were just for show, saying that if something like that happened, he should just take down anyone who complained. That drew a small smile from the brute, and he bent down to help the kid up. The teacher watching the scene smiled, seeing the two of them were actually getting along. Just then, Krista entered the game. Seeing them together, she asked what they were doing there and if they were fighting again. They denied it, and said they were just training. Ignoring the girl's panic, Logan handed Rain a protein shake. Seeing that, Krista asked what was up with Rain and if Logan was manipulating him. Losing his patience, the man asked what her problem was and said they were having a meaningful moment right now. She said she understood they were classmates, but asked why he was suddenly so friendly with Rain. Just then, a teacher appeared behind her and put his hand on her shoulder saying she was as noisy as ever. She started to sweat, realizing it was Professor Owen. Logan asked what brought him here. Owen said he saw a bunch of monkeys gathered around and stopped to see, and also said he had an announcement. The boys asked what kind of announcement, and he said he had terrible news. Basically, it was a coming-of-age ritual. It separated those who would rise from those who would fail. Looking at the boys, Owen explained the school's educational philosophy was constant competition. Turning away, he said anyone who fell behind in the exams would be immediately eliminating, so they better be ready. A while later, Rain was lying in bed. Grabbing a book, he remembered the exams Owen had mentioned. He wondered if he should check what was coming up. Suddenly, his Ruyan started to glitch as if it were malfunctioning. He was wondering what was happening when a bright light appeared. The next second, Rain found himself in a white room. The Ruyan informed him that his unique magic research had reached 40. Rain asked why it was happening now, and then he was asked to confirm the opening of a new Manga circle. The analysis began, and something called Mental Barrier Lord of the Animate World was installed in Rain. Inside this mental barrier, the success rate for magic combinations using unique ancient runes and unique magic formulas increased by 33, and his power increased by 66. An ancient rune appeared in his hand, and the Rudian warned that the mana required to use it was 20, while the mana he had was 12,564. Our protagonist was confused, and the notification explained that this was the activation seal to use the mental barrier. Everything glitched again, and he was back in his room. Staring at the Rudian, Rain thought about everything that had happened. The mental barrier. Among all the sages of the past, only 2 had ever been able to use that secret art. Knowing that, Rain thought what he saw was truly incredible. As the sun rose, our protagonist taped up his hands and decided it was time to head to the black market. He thought the weather was great, unlike the past few days, which were so chaotic he could barely think straight. Rain felt he could at least enjoy a little peace after all that time. Just then, he bumped into someone and apologized, saying he didn't see them. The person said it was okay and there was nothing big between them. When Rain looked up, he saw it was Bart and his group. He greeted them and said it had been a while. Rain immediately asked what he meant since it had only been a few days since they last saw each other. Rain agreed, and suddenly Bart lifted him onto his shoulder. Rain said they should go while Rain struggled in the warrior's arms. The kid asked what the other guy was doing so suddenly and told him to put him down. Laughing, Rain said university students were always busy, and this was the only way they could hang out. Rain said this was kidnapping, and the priest said they heard there was going to be an award for subduing the rat spiders last time and there was no way the hero would sit out. Rain asked if he really had to accept it, and Bart told him not to be so stubborn, and that it was actually good to show up at these ceremonies. Plus, the award was being given by the Adventurers Guild headquarters. So, Rain asked what he meant by headquarters. The group finally arrived at the guild's branch, and outside people were whispering about them. With his dead fish eyes, Rain asked why everyone was making such a big deal. Rain explained that Bart was from the school of the only saint in the Holy Seven Swords, and she was an archer from the Drunken Archer School. And on top of that, he had taken down the queen in a single blow. Rain said maybe their masters were just weak. Hearing that, the girl got angry, but Sammy held her back. Calm as always, Bart said maybe from the kid's perspective it was like that, but he and Ram had fought countless enemies and reached the silver rank. However, they had never thought they lacked skill until they faced the queen. That made Rain think. Then someone appeared, an archer. He pulled down his hood and Rain was startled. The man who looked a lot like the drunken archer said, "So these are the rising stars among the young adventurers." Everyone was whispering that it was the holy archer. Sammy said the Empire gathered the best warriors of the era and named them the 4 Grand Marshals of the Emperor, granting them great power and honor, and just like the rumors said, their presence was overwhelming. looking at Rem, who seemed a bit sad. He asked what was wrong. The archer, looking confused, got closer. After taking a good look at the girl, he said it was a big surprise, asking what his little darling was doing here. The girl tried to deny it, saying he had mistaken her for someone else. He said that would make more sense because there was no way the girl who had left the dojo and dyed her hair would be here playing adventure. He asked if she was stalking him and if she had her brother's permission. The girl started to punch him. Anyway, the man turned to Bart and asked if he was the party leader. The warrior confirmed, and the man named Raren said, "Yeah, that's too obvious considering you took down that mutant. You must be really strong." While Rem struggled in Sammy's arm, Raren said Bart probably had a hard time because of her, but told him to take good care of Rem. With his usual calm expression, Bart said that since they were a party, no one was taking care of anyone. They made up for each other's weaknesses. Hearing that, the archer said he liked Bart more and more, and that if he kept it up, he would soon reach platinum rank. Still stunned, Rain looked at the archer, thinking it was weird that he looked exactly like Kai's. Raren walked up to the boy and said his face looked familiar. It was strange, but he was sure he had seen that face somewhere before, but then he realized it wasn't the face, but the guy's aura. So, Rain introduced himself as Rain Lui. Hearing that, the man said, "In that case, the kid must be Scalcy's grandson," patting his shoulder. He said that looking at the kid now, he could see he looked a bit like Scalcy, especially around the eyes. And he said that when the man was in town, he owed him a lot. While they were talking, the protagonist wondered if guys could talk. Would he say something like that? Noticing the bow on Raren's back, Rain wondered what condition his companion's bow was in. Just then, the bow started to vibrate violently. Gripping the weapon, Raren wondered why it was acting up. When he looked back, he was faced with a warrior. The warrior told him it was time to go, and the archer agreed, starting the event. With a paper in his hand, the man started to read, but then complained about how long it was. In the end, he just skipped the whole thing, and congratulated them for a job well done. Moving on to the reward, Raren said it would be 2 gold coins, and each member of the party would receive 500 contribution points. After the event, the group was surrounded by offers to join other guilds. Watching from the sidelines, Rain and Sandy remarked that Rem and Bart were pretty popular. The priest asked if it was really okay to say the queen was defeated by a scroll, and Rain conferred. Fed up with it all, the protagonist said he was going, and Sammy said in that case, he would let the others know. And before the kid left, he said he had been promoted to bronze, so someone might recognize him on the street. However, he hoped nothing troublesome would happen. In an alley, the protagonist used his Rumian, checking how long it would be before he could use the mental barrier. He realized he still had a long way to go, but he thought once he got it, he could focus on his mana training. The mental barrier, the realm of the sage that he had never reached in his past life, was finally within his grasp. Just then, someone called him, calling him young Master Lui. The person told him that even if he took that path, he wouldn't reach the black market. It's not that he took a wrong turn, because of a series of situations. The black market merchants had fled, so it was temporarily closed. The person took off his hat and said it was a pleasure to meet him, revealing he was part of the Magic Alliance. He asked if he could have a moment of Rain's time. When they got to a restaurant, he asked Rain what he wanted to eat, but Rain said they should get straight to the point. The man said Rain didn't need to be so guarded. He wasn't there to question him about the black market. Suspicious, the protagonist wondered how they knew he was going to the black market. On top of that, what really confused him was the amount of mana the man was radiating. Apologizing for forgetting to introduce himself, the man showed a watch and introduced himself as Doran Slade, saying he worked in the Special Operations Division of the Alliance. He also revealed he used to be the boy's father's secretary when his father was the student council president. The protagonist asked what he was getting at. The man explained he just wanted to make it clear that he wasn't shady and that he was on the boy's side. Also, he wanted to confirm a few things with Rain, asking if Rain was the one who had used the magic that took down the mutant queen because there were no records of Bart's group going to a magic shop recently. Even assuming they could have bought it beforehand, for the past 10 years there hadn't been a 4-star mage capable of creating a scroll that powerful. So, the man said he had checked if Scalcy Lui had made one to protect his grandson, but that wasn't it either. Looking at the boy sharply, the man said that in that case, there was only one conclusion. Realizing where Doran was going, the protagonist said he never intended to hide it from the stars, but he had his concerns. With a cold look, Doran asked if he meant the black mages. Seeing this guy knew a lot, Rain wondered if he was just investigating him, or if he was stalking him like a creep. Just then, the waiter brought the food, but the order was wrong. Doran asked if it was for two. Nervous, the waiter asked if the man had only meant to order for one. Since there were two of them, he assumed it was for two. Holding 2 skewers of meat. The other guy said it was fine. He could eat it all. With his usual dead fish eyes, Rain got up and said that if that was all, he was leaving. Before the kid could leave, Doran said he needed to talk and asked if he wanted to work with the Special Operations Division of the Alliance. The protagonist said no, that he was just a student. So, the man said the offer was really for after he graduated. Since his father was still healthy, it would take a long time for the kid to inherit the estate. So, Doran asked what Rain thought about helping him fight criminals in the meantime. If he accepted, he would have the authority to investigate cases involving black magic on his own, and it would be a great place to build a career. As he walked out, Rain said he wasn't interested. Before the kid left, Doran mentioned that the Black Church was becoming more and more active, and because of that, the higher-ups in the Alliance were in denial, drunk on peace, but something big was definitely about to happen. Pointing the skewer up, the man said he really wanted to believe they were ready to stop them, but he wasn't sure if that was really true. Before leaving, the protagonist said he didn't know what Doran was talking about, but he would think about it. Doran thanked him. As he walked, Rain wondered if he really had to fight the church in this lies, thinking maybe he should let the operations division handle it. Smiling, Doran yelled after him, saying that if he needed anything from the black market, he should look for the VIP escort mission during the holidays. Rain just looked at him, embarrassed. Doran watched the kid walk through the city, and then suddenly a girl fell from the sky and asked if he had been rejected. The girl with huge dark circles under her eyes said that this year's freshmen were very talented, and asked why he had gone straight for the genius young master. Doran said that in the end, the kid wouldn't be a part of the golden generation. Sitting down on the chair awkwardly, the woman asked why. Doran said Rain didn't seem to have any connection to Terraina, so they should look for other suspects. She then asked if there was really a possibility that any of Delay's freshmen had been in contact with Terraina. While drooling over his skewer, Doran said his gut told him there was. And since the contact could have happened even before they entered the school, they should check their pasts. In his head, Doran agreed with the girl. I mean, how could the kid be considered part of the golden generation? He thought that in the end, his father had created something monstrous because he had never met anyone with a future as scary as Rain's. At the library, the protagonist explained to Karen that he wouldn't be able to get the book, saying it was okay. The librarian said it all happened because she had been careless. She also said she was glad Rain was safe. Rain gave a nervous smile and asked if any strange person in a hat had shown up there, but Karen said no. But after thinking for a bit, she remembered something and said someone from the special task force had come. She said they were looking into some senior librarians they had known for a long time, and then left. But Karen said she didn't see them, so she didn't know what they looked like. Rain said he understood, and saying it was time to head back to the dorms, he thanked her for the information. Walking through the dorm hallway, the protagonist, realizing Doran had been there, wondered who the man had talked to on the black market. Seeing 2 delivery boxes in front of his door, he thought the time had come. Inside were 2 giant spirit gems. Rain thought he could finally store the mana needed for the mental barrier. He placed his hands on the gems. His current mana was about 12-0, and the mental barrier spell needed about 20-0. So, he decided to store 8-0 to use when he cast the spell. The orbs began to glow intensely. It seemed to have drained a large amount of his mana, causing him to collapse from exhaustion. Tired, Rain said the mana transfer was done, but he still had to wait for it to stabilize. Night fell, and Rain was meditating. Opening his eyes, he said it was time. Making a hand sign, he activated the mental formation. The noble animate world. The orbs glow and the spell began to form. Just then, the gems started to crack and Rain finally coughed up blood from the strain. Lying on the floor, he thought that as expected, he had failed. But when he looked at his palm, the ancient rune was shining a brilliant gold. The ancient runes were also glowing around him. Getting up, he felt something different. And when he tried a magic circle, Rain said it was impossible. He could now feel it instinctively. That magic formation was perfect. The ancient runes were optimizing themselves, and the equations were being refined. Back on the ground, he thought that was what his mind looked like a mental barrier was a mirror reflecting a mage's thoughts. The second sage, Wait Warden, had once said that, and now he finally understood. The desire for truth appeared as a mental image. The transformed world of the Noble One didn't give him new knowledge. It just compensated for his technical knowledge and his weaknesses. But for Rain, that was perfect. He could now master his spells through self-study without any guidance. Smiling, he thought he had taken another step closer to becoming a 7-star mage. In the teacher's lounge, the headmaster was asking if the student's schedule was messed up. Then, the substitute teacher Kyle confirmed, saying that with the practicals going on, they could focus on the freshmen next week. The headmaster said she had heard the freshman class had a lot of excellent students, which had made some of the teachers curious. A teacher named Evan said he didn't know much, but it sounded like it would be interesting, especially that prodigy whom until recently had hidden his talents. After all, no one knew what would happen. Annoyed, Ellen stood there with her arms crossed, thinking about how too many things had gone wrong. As if she could read the girl's mind. Caroline told her to calm down. One of the teachers remarked that Caroline looked pretty confident, and that the next one to be crushed after Logan might be the student she was teaching. Laughing, Caroline said, "We'll see." In her head, the headmaster thought that if things went according to plan, the heir to the Page family could lead the academy's students as their golden pillar. Just then, Professor Marhana caught her attention, saying they should get moving, concentrating her aura. She said that in that case, they should inform the academy to gather the students immediately, because starting that day, the exams would begin. In the classroom, our protagonist looked like a zombie. He thought Logan must think he was made of iron. Seeing the other students get up immediately, Rain asked Krista what was up. She explained they were told to go to the auditorium. It was for a meeting about the exams. Rain asked if the exams weren't next week, but Krista said that's how delay worked. They changed schedules abruptly. He asked why, and that's when Gertrude appeared, explaining it was to prevent them from procrastinating until the last minute. Our protagonist said that if someone could deliver the same results no matter when, that was a talent, so the teachers probably knew what they were doing. Gertrude laughed and agreed, but in her head, she thought the boy was annoying and that you really couldn't like rich kids. Getting up, Krista said, "That's exactly why you have to give it your all without any regrets." When they got to the auditorium, they walked in, and as he looked around, Gertrude noticed the students' faces. They didn't look happy about what they were seeing. Rain finally spotted Logan and called him. Seeing him, Logan said Rain had gotten here pretty fast, and Rain said it was nothing. Gertrude then muttered in Rain's ear, warning him not to be friends with Logan. He was one of the rivals Rain should be worried about. Rain, on the other hand, said there was no way that guy could be his rival. After all, he gave him protein every day. Angry, she asked if he was a pigeon being bought with food. Finally realizing who it was, Logan said even Krista's lackey was here and asked if she wanted magic protein. With veins popping on her face, she said she wasn't in the mood for jokes, so he wanted to fight. He better be careful. Logan, completely sarcastic, said he was so scared. Just then, Krista walked up and pulled the two of them apart, saying they were being too loud. With a serious face, she told them to leave if they wanted to talk. Rain was startled. He didn't expect Krista to be like that, and Gertrude apologized. Walking away from them, Krista said that if they wanted to stay, they would have to fight like their lives depended on it. Just then, a voice greeted them and said she liked the tense atmosphere and told them to keep that mindset during the exams. Then they saw it was Professor Caroline, and as she started, she said she would announce the details of the exam. She said the exams would take place all week starting that day until Friday, which made the students angry. On top of that, their exams would be graded by their respective teachers, and if a teacher failed you, he had to leave the school that very day. Now, if they would allow her, Caroline said she would announce the teachers who would be evaluating them. From the shadow, the teachers walked out. When the students saw who it was, they panicked. Gertrude started frantically patting Rain's shoulder, and he asked what was wrong with her. Panicking, she asked if he had really never heard of Professor Marhana. She used to be the head of the Magic Alliance, and now she was the head professor at Delay. On top of that, leading the Magic Alliance was an honor only the greatest mage of the era could have. Logan was shocked to realize a big name from the magic world had just appeared. Gertrude continued to yell at Rain until she explained that this woman was the one who had replaced his grandfather as the head of the Alliance, which only confused him. Thinking about what his grandfather was like, the protagonist thought the woman must be a real monster. She then told him about the other teachers who came with Marhana. Thud, a genius who graduated at the top of the 1378 class. Professor Jiren, who built his magic tower at the age of 20, and Professor Allen, who wrote for the Daily Magical Hearing newspaper, saying they were the elite teachers who taught the second and third years. Gertrude remarked that it was a monster lineup. Marhana was silent for a moment. Then she cleared her throat, catching everyone's attention in the hall. Using an amplification spell, she told everyone to shut up. Her voice was so loud it actually scared the students. Leaning on her staff, she asked where they thought they were and said, "The whole point of these tests is to weed out the useless ones like you." She also said that the proctors wouldn't go easy on them like the previous ones, making the kids wonder what she even considered easy. She added that the teachers proctoring them were the kind of people who would fail you the moment they decided you didn't have talent, which made everyone even more nervous. Seeing they finally seemed ready for the exams, Barhena smiled and said, "Not bad." She then explained the tests would take place in different locations, and each location was assigned based on each student's individual characteristics. They would soon be notified of their testing location, so they needed to check and go to their assigned teacher's room. She then declared that this was delay. The strong survive, and the weak are eliminated, telling them to remember that rule well. She dismissed them. Inside a place that looked like a cave, Professor Kyle said they had finally arrived, and from here they would have to face a labyrinth. Hearing that, the students started to whisper, wondering if they would make it out safely. Resting his chin on his hand, the protagonist said he didn't remember there being any caves around there. Hearing him, the professor asked what Rain had just said. Rain replied that since this was the secret land of the Red Dragon Legion, it was surprising there was a labyrinth here. Kyle was impressed with the kid's knowledge, but said not to worry. The labyrinth was artificial, and he controlled everything. He added that even if they got hurt, their lives probably wouldn't be in danger. That probably made the students uneasy. The professor then asked if they shouldn't be more worried about passing the exam. Calmly, he explained he preferred relative grading over absolute grading. In this system, the top person gets N's rank. The second and third get A and so on down to F meant rank 39, and anyone below that had to retake. The main criterion was the time to clear the labyrinth, and clearing it meant exterminating every monster inside. They would be tested in pairs, and if they couldn't finish within 40 minutes, they would be expelled. A window opened next to Kyle, and he explained the teams were formed based on entrance scores. After checking the results, they should go find their partners. Rain wondered who his partner would be. Then a moment later, a clay doll fell from the sky. He was confused about what it was until someone stepped on it, crushing it to pieces. Rain was annoyed to see it was Krista. With a strange smile, she asked if he thought the heavens were cruel since he had to compete with her on the very first day of the exam, telling him to get ready. She said she would crush Rain's pride. Just then, Logan appeared and asked what they were doing, saying he wanted in. He said he had good news for Rain, who looked even more miserable, not knowing what was coming. Then the big guy revealed that he and Rain were on the same team. That confused Krista and Rain for a moment. Greeting Logan, Rain said it would be an honor to work with him, but that annoyed Krista. She said it didn't make sense because it wouldn't be fair for all the other good students to be on the same team. Smiling, the protagonist asked if she was finally admitting he actually had skills. She denied it, and said he was good enough, I guess. Krista had a little hope when she remembered Rain's entrance exam, but then she remembered he had gotten in through the supplementary exam, and that killed her last bit of hope. A student muttered that Rain and Logan were on the same team, and another asked if they hadn't fought less time. Logan said he didn't really care, he would be at the top no matter what. Hearing that, Rain just smiled and told them to try their luck. Turning back to Logan, Rain asked why he was still obsessed with ranks, and if the exam was really that important if he wanted to graduate at the top. Logan asked if Rain was planning on graduating at the top. Logan explained that if that was the goal, then yes, it was very important, because there were only 4 official exams per year. Muttering if that was the case, Rain turned to Krista and apologized, saying he couldn't go easy on her this time. She looked confused for a second, then smiled and said that was exactly what she wanted. Clapping, the instructor caught everyone's attention and said they had 10 minutes to discuss before entering. He explained that inside the labyrinth there were 20 paths, and each path had the same number of enemies, but only one team was allowed per path. All the students started to discuss strategies. Meanwhile, the assistant professor asked Kyle why he always gave the test to the freshmen. Kyle said that the only time you really find out a mage's talent is when they face something they've never faced before, which confused the assistant. Kyle added that in those situations, their minds go blank, their judgment gets clouded, and they hesitate. So, the exam was aimed at finding those who shine under pressure. That was his job. Logan discussed a strategy with Rain, asking what he thought about just destroying whatever came their way. Rain said it wasn't a bad idea, but it would be better to have a more solid plan before they entered the labyrinth. But someone was talking too loud, and it was messing with Rain's thoughts, which started to annoy him. Mocking him, Krista said that instead of eavesdropping, he could be coming up with a strategy for his own team. Annoyed, Rain told her to focus on her own team. Krista said it was too bad for him, because she already had her strategy. Logan said she seemed pretty confident considering the limited magic they were allowed to use in the labyrinth, and she confirmed. Calling Rain, she asked if he had really said he would graduate at the top. She then apologized, saying she had been at the top her whole life, and this exam would be no different. She promised she would make him understand the difference between their abilities. With that, she quickly left, followed by her partner. A light gleamed on the professor's glasses as he announced that Team 2 would begin the exam. Kyle and his assistant watched them through a magic camera. As they enter, Krista told her partner to activate light magic. He said his detection magic had found something, and she told him to let her handle the landing and focus on finding targets. Krista softened the fall with sand magic. The boy then said he had found 2 enemies 20 meters ahead behind a pillar to the northwest. Crossing her arms, Krista said, "Arise," and summoned a bunch of soldiers, going full solo leveling style. Her summoning speed shocked her partner and both Rain and Logan, because it wasn't easy to create that many summons that quickly. That amused Kyle, and panicked the assistant professor, because of how strong she was. It was the bloodline magic of the Warden family created by the second Sage Right Warden. And even though it was a 2-star spell, the speed she used it at was insane. Being able to perfectly control 12 summons at once at her age could only be pure genius. Krista looked up to see a monster being sliced in half. Her partner said he had detected 3 more enemies in the hole to the left, and she said they should go there. He said it was right there, but after walking for a long time, Krista got annoyed and asked what he even meant by it right there. He asked her to wait a second and warned her there was a monster between the rocks at their 3 o'clock, another at their 8 o'clock, and one on the ceiling right in front of them. She told her phantoms to attack, saying he should just leave this to her. Soon, the monsters were taken out by her sand summons. Her partner was shocked at how fast she had taken down 3 enemies. Looking back, the girl asked what he was doing, and he said there was nothing there. So, she said they should keep moving. Outside, the other students were watching them. They were talking about how the pair was moving through the labyrinth like it was nothing. Panicked by the girl's skill, our protagonist said being able to use a 2-star spell with that much precision was really impressive. Logan said, "Well, it's obviously Krista they're talking about, the most promising genius of her generation." Rain asked if she was really that amazing. And the other guy explained that even the school's elders warned them to be careful with Krista. Even while fighting, Krista kept pushing herself, thinking it wasn't enough yet. She remembered 2 mages talking about how her family was high class and said that it was only natural. After all, their current leader at the time was the headmaster of Delay. Looking at the girl who was still a child, one of the mages asked if she agreed, but then he wondered if her father was really worthy of being the leader, because he heard the guy had just barely become a 2-star mage. So, how could 2 families that once produced sages be so different? The mage in the black robe told him to stop, but the red mage said he was just telling the truth, putting his hand on the girl's shoulder. The red mage told Krista to let her father know their family wasn't worthy of being a mage family because that's what everyone said. And besides, even her mother and 2 older sisters couldn't use magic. He said if she clung to all that, things would only get worse. So, she should leave the magic world and live in peace. It would be better for everyone. As she stumbled, the girl repeated those words in her head while taking down the 20th enemy. Looking at her partner, who was completely exhausted, she asked, "What's next?" And the other guy begged for a break, but Krista said they didn't have time for that, dragging him with one of her summons. While pulling him, she told him to just point out where the next enemy was. Outside, the students continued to talk about that insane performance. The teacher thought it was chilling. He never expected she could handle magic at that level. Back in the past, the girl stood facing a light in the middle of darkness, and the blue mage asked if something was wrong. She told him she would become the greatest mage of all time, so her mother, father, and sisters wouldn't be looked down on anymore. Back in the present, taking down enemies one by one, Krista told herself she would prove it. She swore she would take back their honor and prestige with her own hands. Krista remembered that after she said that, the mage had knelt and told her he was counting on her to restore the Warden family once again. A monster that looked like a Zubat swooped down at one of her summons and destroyed it. She backed away, dodging the attack, and summoned another sand monster, telling it to get up. She controlled it to charge straight at the monster. The soldier finally slammed the monster to the ground with a punch. 4 minutes had passed. The assistant professor announced that all magical reactions had disappeared. And just like that, Team's exam was over with a total time of 4 minutes and 13 seconds, finishing in less than 5 minutes. Kyle said that was exactly what you'd expect from a descendant of a mage family. He then declared Krista's score was ins. As Krista's group left the labyrinth, the other students wondered how that was even possible. Most of them hadn't even finished discussing their strategies. Logan had expected Krista to be talented, but not to that extent. Now he understood why the elders were watching her. It made sense that she was considered a potential leader for the Magic City. The group stopped in front of Kyle, who said that since he started teaching, their team was now second in the time rankings, finishing in under 5 minutes. Bragging, the girl said finishing things with overwhelming power was how her family did things. The professor thought that the Warden family's strength probably lay in the highlands and they were hiding a huge reserve of stamina and mana. Even though he had strategized around that, the girl's movements couldn't be explained by just that. That result came from her insane effort. Her greatest advantage was that she was a truly hard-working genius. Calling the girl and her partner over, the professor said it went without saying. They had passed. There were still a few students left, but he immediately added that their score was ins. Krista cleared her throat and bowed, saying he was too kind. He wished her luck, and she turned away, overjoyed. As she walked past our protagonist, she looked at him, thinking, "Yes, that's me." Smiling, Rain told Logan this might be more fun than he expected. And Logan agreed. Rain had another flashback from when he was Lin. Esther said people used to call the place they were in the Southern Star because it was so beautiful, but now it wasn't even close. Frey sat down asking what the plan was because going into that fog with basically certain death. Our protagonist agreed and the silver-haired leader complained she was hungry. After thinking for a bit, Esther told Len to destroy everything. He said he understood, but then realizing what she really meant, he turned back and asked what the hell she was talking about. Wasn't the city a cultural heritage? Esther said, yeah. In that case, Lane said, we need to preserve the original shape so we can fix it later. Kyle and Frey laughed, and he asked if they were messing with him. Striking a pose, Asura explained to Lan that there are times in life when you just have to dive in headfirst and deal with the consequences later. He asked what she was talking about. Frey agreed with Esther and Lan told her to shut up. Blushing, Frey smiled and said that to her, he was more important than any cultural heritage, and as the leader, she would take responsibility later, clenching her fist. Esther said that if it came to it, she would use her fists too. Seeing how determined Esther was, our protagonist asked if the problem was really that simple, and she said she hated complicated problems. Forming a magic circle in his hand, he said he understood, and that he wouldn't care about what they had to deal with later. It was crazy how one irresponsible decision could change the world. Back in the present, Rain said he had made up his mind. Saying he had a great idea, he told Logan to come closer. Logan asked if Rain was messing with him because that could get them disqualified. Rain just said he would take responsibility if something went wrong. Logan scratched his head, worried, and said that even if they just did it gently, they would still pass, but it wouldn't be any fun. Rain smiled, realizing his point had worked. Just then, Krista, who had been listening, asked what they were doing and why they could be disqualified. Rain asked if she was scared and told her to just wait and see what they were about to do. She asked what they even meant by all that. This was an exam, not a time to play, so they should be serious. Turning to her, Rain said that magic was supposed to be fun. Didn't she think so? The preparation time was up, and the professor told the teams to get ready. Realizing they were out of time, the teams rushed into the labyrinth, but Rain, completely calm, walked up to the professor and called him. He asked if the safety of the students inside was guaranteed, and the professor said yes. Since he was controlling everything with magic, no one would be in mortal danger. Then Rain asked if Logan heard that, and said they should go ahead with the plan. The assistant professor announced that 9 minutes had passed, and there was only 1 minute left. Rain asked if Logan was ready, taking off his jacket. Logan calmly said he only needed 7 seconds. In that case, Rain said, I'm counting on you. Remembering his adventures with his companions, he summoned his magic and said he would blow everything up. They maxed out their magic, declaring that the exam was finally about to begin. Krista and her partner were stunned, wondering if they were seriously not going into the labyrinth. Kyle noticed something. The thing in Rain's eyes was the Bell City's magic of the Luik family, a magic that allows you to see through all magic. The mere fact that he could use it at 16 already put him far beyond the genius level of his family. However, Kyle wondered what the kid was about to do just standing there. Just then, the boy finally finished detecting all the monsters inside the labyrinth. He then used magic to link up, and Logan was ready to throw a punch. Seeing this, the professor couldn't help but be amazed. Rain signaled Logan to attack, and the next second, Logan punched the ground with terrifying force, shattering it. Shielding herself from the powerful shockwave, Krista called him an idiot, saying he had just blocked the entrance. Kyle then realized that considering how powerful the punch was, the effect was too small. But when he looked closer, he noticed something. Rain still had the spell activated. Then a crack started to spread towards the back of the labyrinth. Inside, under each monster, a circle formed. Rain smiled, and a moment later, the monsters were crushed like roaches, and everyone nearby lost their balance from the earthquake it caused. Krista wondered what the hell had just happened. Panicked, the assistant professor asked if it was an earthquake, while Kyle wondered if it was some kind of magical reaction. Dusting himself off, Kyle asked his assistant if there were any magical reactions inside the labyrinth. But when the assistant checked, he panicked at what he saw. He called Kyle, and Kyle, confused, asked what was wrong, reminding him there was only 1 minute left. That's when the man told him that when he checked the labyrinth status, he couldn't find a single monster. The professor was even more shocked because it hadn't even been a minute. Scratching his neck, the assistant said it couldn't be right. Kyle asked why, and the other guy explained it didn't make sense. The whole point was to test skills in the labyrinth. But destroying everything went against what the exam was supposed to be. And no monsters left alive was basically just luck, so it should be voided. And its rank was supposed to mean a perfect result. But in this case, it was a mess. After thinking for a bit, Kyle told his assistant that geniuses are never perfect. Perfect is a state that fits all the ideals of the world, but the geniuses who change the world always break those ideals. A genius isn't someone who fits into perfection. If anything, they create a new kind of perfection. Zier asked what the professor meant by that, and Kyle explained that if they went by the traditional method, Rain and Logan were far from perfect. But then he asked Zier if he had ever thought of destroying the labyrinth. The man said no, but if he wanted to, he could. Kyle said that was the point. The boys had created a new path. Being able to think of and actually do something no one else had done. That's what mattered most. It was about having the knowledge and understanding to turn a ridiculous idea into a reality. Looking at the boys smiling, the professor told his assistant to just wait and see because that student would become the center of the magic world and push its limits. 40 minutes later, the test was over. Kyle said the results would be posted and told the students to go see. In the hardest test of the year, most of the candidates who passed finished in 30 minutes. A lot of students had either run out of mana or gotten injured from losing control of their magic. On top of that, some students had to retake after being hit by a target more than 3 times. Krista and her partner's team finished in 4 minutes and 13 seconds, an insane result. In that case, N's rank made perfect sense, but Logan and Rain's team finished in under a minute, so the girls' evaluation was dropped to an A rank. Krista had another flashback, where people were saying it seemed the warden family's daughter could use 2-star magic at the age of 6. They thought it was good news, because for the warden family, who were basically on the verge of collapse, it was a huge relief. They then stopped paying attention to the girl who was bragging intensely and started asking about the Lewick family's situation. People were talking about the so-called Prince of Disaster, saying they felt sorry for him, but also said it wasn't their problem and they were just glad he wasn't part of their family. Krista always picked fights with Rain, because he didn't care what people said about him. But he had also never cared what she said. However, on the day they were about to enter the academy, Rain had ended up saving her. Even her tutor praised him for how fast he had activated the magic. With all that, she couldn't help but wonder what had happened, because he didn't seem that strong during the family gathering. Her tutor was also curious why he was there since the entrance exam had already started. Krista asked if she could overlook him being late. And then Caroline asked since when did she care about other students, right? The girl then said that just like her teacher had noticed before, having him around would heat things up. She also asked if a little competition would be good for the school. She was finally taking it all seriously. At that moment, she declared the boy would be her rival, but the results of that exam had completely crushed her. Her partner walked out, thanking her since he had gotten a good score thanks to her. Krista, however, just stood there stunned, wondering if she had really lost again, especially to someone who treated magic like it was nothing. She was annoyed that she hadn't thought of destroying the labyrinth, but then she realized that even if she had, she wouldn't have been able to do it. Looking at her, Kyle realized she was very competitive. He got that feeling. He thought it was a good thing. But in his head, he remarked that if Krista continued to chase after Rain, she would face a bumpy, thorny path. Sighing, he adjusted his glasses. He caught everyone's attention and said that normally only one team should receive its rank evaluation. But since the teams were formed based on scores, Logan and Rain ended up on the same team, which was unfair. So, he announced that both teams would receive its rank evaluation. All the students were happy, But Krista was still disappointed about everything. Rain walked up to her and said it seemed it was a draw. He held out his hand to shake hers, but she slapped it away. Everyone watching was confused. Then Krista asked if he seriously thought she would be happy with that result. Rain was confused and asked why she wouldn't be. After all, they both got ins rank. Belling. She told him not to mess with her because she only got that evaluation out of pity. Anxiety took over, and while she begged everyone not to look at her, Krista ran off. Rain called after her, trying to stop her, but he couldn't. He turned to Logan and asked if he had said something wrong. Logan said he was sure he hadn't, but since he was from one of the 8 magic schools, he didn't really understand all this magic family stuff. Noticing Logan was acting weird, Rain asked what he knew, because he was clearly lying. Logan then repeated the things people said, like the Warden family was done for, and that cursed magic family. Hearing that, Rain asked why he would say that. Logan explained that's what everyone said. All of Warden's glory was in the past. And until Krista was born, the Warden family didn't have what it took to be considered a magic family. Krista was the one who brought the family back and got them recognized as a magic family again. She did it all by herself. And since she had been carrying the family alone so far, she was probably full of pent-up frustration. Somewhere deep in the forest, Krista was squatting, crying. Hearing the boy's footsteps, she got up. She said, "Magic families and mages are supposed to be respected, almost worshipped because people look at them with great expectations, so they can't become someone others can treat like garbage." But all of that hurt Krista. Frustrated, she said she had given everything she had to get here since she was 6, and she was still just barely here. And yet, a kid with no lineage or famous family name went and disgraced the family by accepting that duel. On top of that, Rain talked to everyone like it was nothing, without any hesitation at all. Krista yelled that she didn't understand what he meant when he said magic was something you do for fun because none of this was fun for her. Summoning a spell, she demanded to know why. Even though she was so serious, his evaluation was higher than hers. Rain calmly dispelled the sand summon she had created. He said he loved magic, and when it worked the way he imagined, all the pain and effort seemed to melt away. It was something only those who really worked for it could understand, but it wasn't all fun and games. When Rain admitted he had been through a lot of pain and desperation, Krista charged at him, creating another summon. Blocking her magic, he said she was the last hope of her family, and that she had practiced so hard. She was at the level of someone much older. He couldn't even imagine how much pain she had to endure. But one thing was for sure, thoughtfully, Rain said it seemed like this was the first time she had really succeeded with that spell. Tears fell down her face as she heard that. Krista looked angry, but the boy just kept talking, telling her that all that suffering and responsibility wasn't hers and that she could have thrown it all away. Even so, she hadn't given up, and he asked her why, summoning another giant rock monster. Krista told him to shut up. Our protagonist stood his ground and asked if it was because she couldn't forget what had happened. Not wanting to hear him, Krista told him to shut up again and hit him with her summons attack. As she did, she remembered how, as a child, she had been so happy just for beating a straw dummy. Still standing after her blow, Rain said she was strong, and that no matter what she did, no one would dare stand against her. Krista burst into tears, and our protagonist said that in that case, she should feel the joy of magic again. Wiping her face, Krista stood up and told him to stop bragging, because it was really starting to get on her nerves. He said he had earned the right to brag since he was the one who won this time, leaving her with nothing to say. Then Rain added that it had been a long time since he had felt that way. Holding out his hand, he said that's what he expected from his rival. He said that thanks to her, he had really had a good time, and he would be counting on her in the next test. That finally drew a smile from her. She had been crying just a moment ago. Blushing slightly, Krista slapped him and told him to stop bragging. Hurrying away, she warned him not to get cocky just because he won, because next time she would crush his ego. Rubbing his face, our protagonist complained about how hard she had hit him. As she ran, Krista apologized to her father, but she had decided the path she would take. Kyle explained to his assistant that talent manifests in different ways, which confused the other guy. So, the teacher explained that sometimes it comes from motivation like classmates, the desire to overcome a big wall, or even a friend you can rely on. Looking at the students, he said things were going to get complicated from here on out, and his assistant asked if it could get any worse. Smiling, Kyle said he was finally sure he had made the right decision, becoming a teacher at Delay. But now they needed to start again. So, he told his helper to call the students. Back at the academy, the students were told there would be no afternoon classes during the exam season. In the hallway, Logan asked why Rain's face was swollen. and Rain said he was imagining it. Changing the subject, Rain said that if they had the whole afternoon free, they should go to the gown. Logan asked if he was tired. They had just finished an exam. Opening the door, Rain said that was exactly why he needed to train. But then they ran into Owen waiting for them, saying it was good they had extra energy. Pointing to a stack of papers, the teacher said he had prepared 150 questions for the math test, so it would be a great practice session. And since there was a written test later, they weren't allowed to go back to the dorms until they were done. Going inside, Logan wondered why he had gotten into this. With an innocent face, Owen said Logan could go home if he wanted and stay as long as he liked, making Logan change his mind immediately. Calling all the students there, the teacher said they were also included. The students complained they were exhausted, and the teacher asked if he needed to repeat himself. As Rain took his share, he looked at Krista. She looked like a zombie, and the teacher said that until just now, he thought she had gone home early, but she had come to him full of energy, so he had given her a few extra questions to do. Krista heard that and yelled, asking if he was kidding her. Owen said he wasn't, and that she shouldn't even think about just doing half because the written test would affect her grade. The students continued to complain endlessly about the test. Meanwhile, the teacher called them primates and said if he heard one more conversation, they would be kicked out of the room. Rain thought they were testing if they could answer correctly when they were tired. But that number of questions was insane. They would be solving the kind of problem more times than he could count. So, this was basically an endurance test. Activating his Belsidious, he decided to cheat a little. 10 minutes later, Rain said he was done. Owen said he had finished very quickly, and that if Rain was that confident, he should hand in his paper and go back to the dorms. Just then, someone asked if Rain was really confident. It was Krista. She was exhausted and said that if he rushed like that, there was no way his score would be higher than hers. Rain remarked that she looked completely drained. Owen yelled at her, asking if she knew how to keep quiet during a test, and she apologized. Rain got up, and as he walked towards the exit, he decided to check on Logan, and he realized the other guy looked completely confused and was far from done. As he closed the door, Rain thought he should go take a shower. The next second, someone walked out of the door. A red-haired girl immediately caught Rain's attention. Her vibrant red hair burned like fire, and her eyes looked like they could see through everything along with the deep darkness within them. It was his first encounter with Lillian. She had been considered the best student after the War of the 8 Great Schools. A while later at the academy, Rain asked Logan who the red-haired girl was, and if he knew her. Logan said he did and asked why Rain brought her up so suddenly. Rain said he just felt like talking about it. Wiping his face with a towel, Rain said he had seen her in the hallway, and her aura seemed strange. He asked what she was like, and Logan got a little tense when he answered. After thinking for a bit, Logan admitted the girl was basically the secret weapon of Rivendell School. He also said Lillian had been the target of rumors since she came to the academy. Rain remembered Rivendell was a school famous for its fire specialists. Logan said that as Rain probably guessed, her red hair was a sign she was blessed by the flame, and her compatibility with fire was beyond normal. Because of that, among the 8 great schools, she was known as the rival of the genius Krista Warden, and people often called her a monster. He added that even the elders said she had the potential to become a great mage. Rain asked if that was an exaggeration, and Logan said it wasn't baseless. She was really that strong. After a moment of silence, Rain thanked him, saying it had been a big help, and Logan drank some water saying he was glad. Then Rain suddenly turned back and said Logan seemed to know a lot about her, and asked if he liked her. Logan spat out his water, and Rain continued, saying they would make a great couple, and he would support him. Logan asked if Rain seriously thought that, and Rain with a silly smile said, "You. Rain thought about what Logan said about her being a secret weapon and concluded he didn't have a moment of peace at delay. At the start of the 4th day of exams, the boys were standing in front of a barrier. They said it looked like a 4-star barrier. Zier started to explain that the test would take place in a virtual world, and they would be divided into a group of 60 teams to the entity. Rain thought that by virtual world, the teacher meant inside the barrier. The teacher also explained the test would be a battle royale. That confused everyone except the teachers who looked bored. He said there would be hidden treasures and every time they found one, they would get a point. On top of that, there would be magical creatures created by the illusion and defeating them would also earn points. The score depended on their difficulty, and the students would have to choose to fight or run. Zier asked if they had any questions, and Krista immediately raised her hand. She asked if the test was basically about who collected the most treasures and took down the most monsters, because that didn't sound like a battle royale at all. The teacher said she could think of it that way, But there was another rule. They were allowed to attack their opponents and steal their points. They were also allowed to steal monsters, treasures, and anything else. And if they wanted, they could even send their classmates to meet their ancestors. That last part stunned everyone. Then someone tapped his staff on the ground, catching everyone's attention. It was Marhina. She explained that since it was a world created from magic, everything that happened inside it was just an illusion. Basically, no matter how serious an attack was, they wouldn't actually be hurt. However, they would still feel pain. And if their body was destroyed or they died, once it was all over, they would return to their real bodies as if nothing happened. So, she said, in that case, they could fight with all they had. The teacher also explained that the evaluation method was simple. The two people who accumulated the most points would get its rank, and there were no other criteria. Hearing the woman's explanation, the students with bad intentions started to think that it was basically just a matter of beating everyone up. Marhina said that the creator of that magic once said that making it possible for people to dream in that world was a mage's duty, and the most important thing to fulfill that duty was skill. In the magic world, the future belongs to the best. So, they had to show what they could do. She said she would start announcing the teams, starting with Team A, which consisted of Hubert, Logan, and Krista. Happy with her team, Krista said she finally had a test worth taking seriously. And Rain heard that and asked if she wasn't serious with the previous tests since she even cried when she lost. Embarrassed, the girl played innocent and asked who told him she cried. Gertrude, watching the whole thing, smiled at the situation. Krista told Rain to focus and make sure he got his rank because only she was worthy of stealing his place. She said she wouldn't accept him losing to anyone but her, and the boys continued to laugh at the scene, which only made her angrier. Deer then announced that Team A's test was about to begin. Moving on to Team B, the group would consist of Gertrude, Lillian, and Rain. In front of the barrier, Gertrude clenched her fists, trying to stay calm. Noticing that, Rain asked if she was nervous, which startled her. She denied it with everything she had, saying he was kidding, and that he was the one who should be worried. Our protagonist asked why he should be worried, and she said it was obvious, because he was on the same team as her, and if Rain tried anything with her, he was a dead man. Waving, the boy smiled and said that wouldn't happen. Turning to the girl behind him, Rain asked what the red-haired girl wanted from him since she had been standing there for a while. She said she had something to tell him, and asked if he was free. Rain said that if it was something interesting, then yes. With Krista, we see her golem fighting fiercely against a giant octopus. An announcement rang out, telling her she had reached 280 points. And she thought that still wasn't enough. While she was wondering how many points Rain would get, she noticed movement in the bushes behind her. And with a snap of her fingers summoned two sand warriors who captured two girls who were trying to ambush her. Seriously, Krista asked if they really thought they could beat her by teaming up, and the girls said no, and begged her to spare them. Krista just let them go, and as the girls ran off, she said beating them wouldn't be worth many points and that next time they should fight fair. The people watching from outside commented that someone who could control a 2-star spell at that age like that was impressive. They also talked about Hubert, who had reached 253 points thanks to his amazing wind control. In third place was Logan with 249 points. He was destroying everything in front of him, a bit crude, but his power was no joke. Professor Kyle remarked that as expected, those three were dominating, and Zier said they had something different. Marhina meanwhile said they were just the opening act. Elin rested her chin on her hand, looking like she was waiting for something. Back where Rain was, Lillian said she had never lost. That confused Rain about what she meant. The red-haired girl explained that because she had never been defeated, if she lost now, she would be severely punished. And she asked why the boy was hiding his strength. Our protagonist said he never hid his strength. He just didn't have a reason to use it. Lillian said that it seemed he was a typical young master from some powerful family. Gertrude asked if the girl wasn't also from a prestigious family, and if so, why she was calling Rain a young master. Lillian asked what she meant by a prestigious family. After all, she wasn't someone worthy of that title. They could call her a tool. Our protagonist asked why a tool, and she explained that she wasn't born from her parents' love. She was created for a single purpose. Her father was the headmaster of Rivendell, and from a young age, she was locked in a room, forced to study magic, and never allowed out. On top of that, if she didn't get good scores, she would be beaten until she passed out. For example, her father could bring her mother into the room and pour hot water on her. That panicked Gertrude hearing all of that. And the girl continued, saying that since her father was a master of fire, he knew how to hurt someone without leaving a serious wound. Rain thought that didn't sound like Warrior Academy and wondered if she didn't graduate at the top, would her father do that again? But the girl said she would personally send him to hell if he tried. Gertrude thought the girl's father was a 4-star mage and wondered if that meant she could really beat someone at that level. Walking past them, Lillian revealed her plan was to graduate from delay with an insane score, gain everyone's recognition, and kick her father out. She said she was basically just warning them not to get in her way. The pink-haired girl said it was all pretty interesting, but Lillian should give up since she was in the same school as Krista, a genius recognized by the whole world. Hearing that, Lillian said Krista Warden meant nothing more to her than an aunt. That made Gertrude angry. So, she walked up to Lillian and asked if she had seriously just called Krista an aunt. Keeping her completely cool demeanor, Lillian mocked her and asked if she had said something wrong. Then Rain cut in, saying he could understand why Lillian was so desperate. He looked at Gertrude and asked her to calm down. Lillian silently looked back as she walked away. The protagonist said that either way, he wouldn't give up on being a top student because he had a friend waiting for him. The crimson-haired girl said she had explained her reasons and had warned him. But if he kept insisting on getting in her way, she would have no choice but to eliminate him. Just then, they announced that Gruppa's test was over. In Tima's test, Bristol and Hubert scored 361 and 338, and they both got ranks. Gertrude greeted Krista with a towel, congratulating her for her hard work. And Krista, completely exhausted, said it felt like a job. Since the first group's test was done, Kyle said it was time for Team A. The students had to choose where they would start. Rain wondered where he should begin. The Aenf mountain ranges were the largest with a lot of monsters and treasures, so they were popular choices. The B&C areas were mountain peaks. They gave you a great view, but there was a risk of being surrounded by other students. The Dini forest areas were good for hiding, but it was hard to keep a good view, and they were pretty bad for scoring points. In Rain's case, he already had a specific location in mind that fit what he wanted. They were then told to remember their chosen starting point after deciding. Krista said it was Gertrude's turn, and Gertrude said it would be a piece of cake. Before she left, Krista called her, telling her to do her best. Gertrude smiled and said she would, then disappeared in a teleportation flash. Team B's spatial transfer was over, and the test was about to begin. Caroline told Ellen that it was Rain's turn. Ellen thought that the criteria Marhana had set were pretty simple: mobility, information gathering, and combat ability. It was a basic exam that tested the most fundamental talents a mage should have. She was sure Rain would leave her speechless. Like Krista, Lillian also chose area F to start, and everyone noticed how confident she was. If it was the most dangerous area, but that danger came with a lot of points, and starting there also made it easy to move into other areas. Compared to Lillian, Zier said the area Rain chose was pretty modest, like a steady way to rack up points while avoiding fights. Caroline said it didn't seem like a bad choice. Caroline said it was boring. She had been excited to see the kid clash with Lillian in area F. Ellen asked if watching him was boring her, and Caroline said yes, because the kid could beat mages from the 8 schools, but he still acted like that. Then Rain ran into a girl in the middle of the forest. Everyone was excited that he had finally found a match. Caroline wondered what he was about to show. She was curious what someone who had gotten ins rank evaluation could really do, but to everyone's shock, and even the girl he was fighting, Rain just turned and ran while she was casting her spell. That disappointed Caroline and made Ellen literally fall off her chair. Watching him run, his aunt had to be held back, angry, yelling about how he could run away in the middle of a battle. Crossing her arms, Krista wondered if the boy really wanted ins ranked evaluation. One of the teachers burst out laughing, saying, "Scalcy's grandson is quite the character." Zier asked if this was really a time to be laughing, and the teacher asked what the problem was, because honestly, things had just gotten a lot more interesting. Marhana noticed the boy was conserving energy, as if he were planning something big. She wondered how he would make up for the lost points. 40 minutes had passed, and compared to Team A, the highest scores were lower, but still stable. In the stands, people were asking who was in the lead. Just then, a boy was holding a gem in his hands. Suddenly, it disappeared, and when he looked back, he saw it in Gertrude's hands, who was now in first place. Caroline thought, "Yeah, that's just like her." Then a monster suddenly attacked Gertrude from behind, but it was taken down quickly. Caroline thought in her head that Gertrude was always hidden in Krista's shadow, but there was no doubt she was a great mage. Caroline asked Zier what place Lillian was in, and when he checked, he realized she wasn't even in the top 20. On top of that, he said she was actually in last place with a total of 0 points. She had been meditating since the start of the exam, which made him wonder what her strategy even was. Krista was chasing a lizard, and she took it down with a fireball. That's when she ran into Lillian, who was standing completely still, as if she didn't even notice Krista was there. Zee remarked that maybe she just didn't care about her score. As for Rain, he was in 13th place and had only fought monsters when necessary. The fact that he had gotten that far, mostly by collecting treasures, was insane. Seeing Rain was in Ariat, a mountainous region. Caroline said he looked experienced in the mountains. And Ellen Joe, the kid must have been a monkey in a past life, but at that speed, he won't reach the top, so she wondered what he was thinking. Then, rain started to fall from the sky on the students. Everyone looked up, happy about it. The weather was perfect for monsters with sensitive hearing. It was the perfect time to start hunting. Just then, a few fireballs appeared on a mountain. It was Lillian. Apparently, she had finally decided to move. Still meditating, she ordered the fireballs to find everyone in the top 10 highest scores. Behind her, a volcano erupted, and as she concentrated her aura, she walked slowly, saying it was time to begin. The students were then warned that the volcano was active and they needed to evacuate the affected area. That battle royale wasn't the kind of test you could survive until the end just by hiding. With the volcanic eruptions, the safe zones were constantly changing, and eventually the students would have to fight each other. Some people in robes remarked that, as expected, the leading group was starting to pick up the pace. Logan said if the group hadn't lost their rhythm, the results would have been different. And Krista said the problem was they lacked finesse. Just then, one of the robed people told them to wait, noticing someone was moving at an insane speed. It was Rain Loic, still racking up his score like crazy. Marhana told them to put a camera on the boy. When they turned it on, he was standing in the middle of a bunch of rock spikes with monster corpses scattered around. Ellen was on the edge of her seat because the boy was finally about to start moving. Inside a cave, drops of water fell into a small pond. A monster came to drink. It then noticed a battle, and ran towards it. Rain's rank was dropping almost like a countdown. Marhana said he was a really interesting kid. Logan asked what the hell was going on, and Krista explained the boy was using vibrations to lure the monsters. That confused Logan, and Krista thought that in the end, this was what Rain had planned from the start. The boy fought with all he had, barely dodging a monster's claws. The monsters got closer, and he thought it was time. He created a magic circle and used a spell on the ground. And just like that, he speared all the monsters at once. Krista and Logan were confused because he was using trees to take them down. Kyle thought that there were no trees in that area, so he must have planned it from the start. One of the robed people checked the boy's hunting score and saw it had reached 164. Caroline, in a cold sweat, said it was impressive that he could use a 3-star magic so quickly while dealing with that many monsters. Bragging about her nephew, Ellen said that was nothing for him. With a total of 362 points, including team, the kid was at the top. After concentrating his aura, he left the area, saying that was enough, and it was time to stop. Kyle thought that that field was basically covered in lava. On top of that, most of the treasures and monsters were gone, so it seemed Gertrude wouldn't be able to surpass Rain. Just then, Zee called him. And when Kyle asked what was up, the other guy said 2 students' names had disappeared. He asked if it was a mistake, and Kyle said that was impossible. Zee showed him, and the teacher realized it was no joke. Kyle thought something was wrong with the ones behind them, and even if they had lost their position, this wasn't normal. At least not in the top 10 or even top 20. So, he asked one of the robe staff to show where the students in 30th and 40th place were 3 minutes ago. When they replayed the footage from 3 minutes ago, a giant fire spell was incinerating one of the students. The teachers panicked at what they were seeing. With the second student, the girl tried to defend herself, but she was hit almost immediately by a second spell, and the last thing she did was curse whoever took her down. The teachers stood frozen, horror written all over their faces. The rain was still falling, and the girl calmly walked, planning on taking them down one by one. If she beat the first or second, that was enough. Caroline and Ellen, horrified, admitted the girl was insanely strong. Marhana said that with a personality like that, she was even more dangerous. Looking at the leaderboard, Gertrude wondered when Rain had passed her. She also noticed Lillian right behind her, and that 20th and 30th place had disappeared. Just then, a bird made a fire flew towards her, and the girl sighed, saying she didn't know what was going on here. The spell knocked down the tree she was on, and she was almost hit too. As she fell, she wondered where those flames came from. But before she could figure it out, another spell came right at her. The attack slammed her to the ground, and Krista, watching the fight, started to get worried. Lillian calmly walked up and noticed there wasn't a single trace of ash. Suddenly, Gertrude threw a kick, and Lillian barely dodged. They both summoned magic to defend themselves, and a clash between water and fire formed. The fact that the fight was so even excited Krista. This was definitely a fair match. Lillian asked if she should get serious this time, unlike before, and Gertrude said it was too late for her to have regrets. Throwing a leaf into the air, the red-haired girl said it seemed she would have to try a different approach than before. She created a giant firebird, forcing Gertrude to struggle just to defend herself. Gertrude said that no matter how hard she tried, the result would be the same. Lillian then broke the necklace she was wearing, and small orbs flew everywhere. Krista realized it was a prayer bead. Caroline was surprised the girl was using that. Rivendell Academy was famous for having mid-level mages use charms to set up magic circles, quickly calculating shapes and rune-like scripts to maximize efficiency in battle when time was tight. Looking up, Gertrude saw that Lillian had created a bunch of fire insects. Clenching her fists, Lillian used the fire insect stream. The swarm of blazing insects then charged at Gertrude, who defended herself with water magic. An explosion happened right there, and Lillian stood firm, listening to the crackling of the embers until a hole appeared in the flames. And Gertrude charged out trying to take her down with a kick, but once again, Lillian dodged as if she had expected it. With another charm in her hand, the girl said Gertrude's end had come, but Gertrude took a tree, launching it up towards her. Krista cheered, and Gertrude charged at Lillian, who greeted her with a stream of fire. Gertrude easily dodged, launching herself up with her water magic. She used the thrust to try a flying kick. Ellen was impressed that Lillian dodged that too, making Gertrude slam into the ground. Even while still in the air, Lillian was preparing another charm. And Ellen said that from Gertrude's position, she was about to take a direct hit. But when everyone thought the fight was over, Gertrude created a magic circle on the ground. That caught Lillian off guard. And with a smirk, Gertrude created something like a geyser. Realizing it was a water vein, Kyle said the girl was really skilled, because she had planned that from the start. As expected from the Feton family, famous for their water magic and martial arts, the girl was using her strengths like a pro. This time, Lillian had picked the wrong opponent, pinning the girl to the ground. Gertrude said that if she tried to challenge a lady again without knowing her place, she would gladly crush that arrogant pride of hers. Krista, satisfied, patted Logan on the shoulder. Gertrude pointed out the girl's clothes were wet and said that in that case, her charms were useless. She said she would give her a chance if she didn't want to get her arm broken. She should surrender. Lillian smiled, saying Gertrude was pretty naive, because if it were her in Gertrude's place, she would have already ended her life. With a cold look, Gertrude said it seemed she had chosen the hard path, and without hesitation, she quickly broke the girl's arm. After lying on the ground for a while, Lillian explained that the reason she used charms wasn't because her calculations were slow. With a charm on her tongue, she revealed the real reason. She couldn't control her own power. A bright light shone from her mouth. It startled Gertrude, who quickly backed away. Stumbling, Lillian stood up, and around her were a few fire insects. She then gathered them all, creating an intense light that blinded Gertrude. And when Gertrude looked again, the insects had turned into a giant snake right in front of her. With a wave of her hand, Lillian ordered the snake to swallow the girl. Gertrude wondered how that was even possible, and admitted she didn't expect it to reach that level. A fire snake, the largest summon among the fire-divine beasts that the Ruindel school prided itself on. They said that this summon was the main one used by the school's founder, the great Mage Karine. The snake was known to be extremely picky about its master. Even so, it seemed it was only at about 30 of its power since it wasn't fully formed. Ellen remarked that even so, it was insane for a 16-year-old to be able to summon something like that. Shaking, Krista wondered if there was any way to beat it, almost as if she had hurt her. Gertrude said that was the real problem. The next second, the giant snake roared and shot a stream of fire. Gertrude barely dodged, but the flames caught her cloak, putting out the fire on her clothes. She wondered when those flames had hit her. Looking around, she realized the terrible destruction the flames had let. The rocks hadn't just melted, they had turned to ash. Stunned, Gertrude, Krista, and Logan realized that was the snake's true power. An explosion happened elsewhere in the forest. There, a girl was running from a monster when the stream of fire hit it. The robed people remarked that the snake was surrounding Gertrude. So, Gertrude had been marked as its target, and it seemed Lillian was planning on going all the way. Deer asked Kyle if the girl was going too far, even if it didn't kill her instantly. The pain would be brutal, and if she was hit by those flames, She could be seriously traumatized. So, he asked if it would be better to stop the test, and Kyle asked Manhwa what she thought. The woman raised her hand and said she agreed it was probably the best decision. But then, she noticed Rain was on a tree over a burning forest. During his training, Rain's grandfather had told him that with the amount of mana he had at the time, his limit was a total of 3 uses, but that depended on the level of the mage he was trying to interfere with. He said that if Rain reached his mana limit and tried to force it, he would be completely exhausted. In other words, he had to choose the right moment to use it. Back in the present, Rain watched everything from the treetop. Thinking he had enough points, he decided to find a safe place because after that group attack, his mana was almost depleted, and there was no reason to risk it right now. But at the same time putting himself in the girl's shoes, he couldn't just stand by, so he jumped from the branch he was on, activating Belsidius. Rain noticed the magic circle, and the formula had 5 triangles with ancient runes written inside, set up to detect someone approaching. As he fell, the boy studied Lillian's magic. His eyes were bleeding from the strain. After fighting Logan and the Spider Queen, he noticed that every time he overcame a hurdle, his control improved, and the stronger the enemy, the faster he got closer to 6-star magic. Seeing the girl was about to be attacked, Rain thought it wasn't for her. It was for him and that she shouldn't fool herself. The next second, he dispelled the magic that was heading towards her. That shocked everyone. Even Gertrude herself, even though part of her body was on fire, just stood there stunned. Lillian panicked because the fire snake had disappeared. Helping others in this exam didn't come with any rewards. And with the time limit and limited resources, it made it even weirder. But what almost no one knew was that the test also evaluated if the participants would overcome their personal interests. Looking at the boy, Manhwa wondered if this was Scalzi's doing. She smiled and said the boy would surely get a very high score. Vomiting blood, Rain realized canceling a 5-star spell took more mana than he thought. It was over, but now he felt as empty as a hollow barrel. Gertrude, sitting on the ground, called Rain. When he saw she was still there, he asked what she was doing and told her to run away as fast as she could. Lillian was standing there, her mind a mess. She thought the Fenton family's magic was no match for her since she didn't have enough mana to summon the snake again. And the snake disappearing was definitely because of that boy. She wondered if he was really going to interfere again. As she walked towards him, she thought that whether he had stopped the snake or not, if he was defenseless right now, she had to beat him to be the highest score. She then summoned another fire snake, but its size caught the attention of the robed observer because it looked much smaller. Rain barely dodged the attack. Even if it was smaller, the firepower was still terrifying. Seeing the boy was about to be hit, Ellen yelled for him to be careful. Just as Lillian was about to attack, Gertrude appeared behind her. Lillian turned, but was hit by a magic-infused punch to the stomach. She went flying, trying to soften the impact with her magic. Rain was surprised. He didn't expect the girl to come back to save him. He asked why she came back and Gertrude said it was because she was his rival, and if he got expelled, her lady Krista would break down from sadness. Hearing that from outside, Krista turned red as a tomato. People started to whisper, and Krista tried to explain they were just rivals. Worried, Logan just gave a thumbs up and Krista asked if he wanted to die. He said they looked good together, and losing her patience, she slapped him across the face. Logan fell to the ground and embarrassed. Krista thought that once the exam was over, Gertrude's life was over. But anyway, she thought Rain was the only one who had managed to stop the fire snake. People said that if you mastered the Luik bloodline magic, you could completely control all magic. But in 1,000 years of history, only 3 people had ever reached that level. And even then, from what she had seen, they only did it when they were old, badly injured. Gertrude told the boy to leave, because this was between her and Lillian. Rain said she was injured and in a really bad state, but she insisted she was fine and that she wasn't done with Lillian yet. And she added, honestly, you were in the way of that girl. Before leaving, Rain asked her not to die. Gertrude said, obviously, that's not going to happen. Lillian walked up to Gertrude and vomited blood, telling her to get out of the way. Gertrude laughed. Lillian was the one who started this, and now she was telling her to get out of the way. The red-haired girl said all obstacles needed to be removed. She charged forward with her tongue out as if the snake's spirit had merged with her. Gertrude, on the other hand, moved as calmly as the ocean waves. The collision was brutal. In the forest, Rain ran to hide, but something almost hit him, and he barely dodged. Zier asked what that was. That's when Rain noticed it was a group of low-level students who had teamed up, hoping to ambush and take him down. He was completely drained physically and magically, and that was really bad. Smiling, he said that in the end, they were just low-level students. And he asked if they really thought they could beat him when even Logan couldn't, and that if they backed off, he would let them go in peace. One of the boys said he was right. Rain was really strong. But then he asked why someone as strong as Rain was trying to negotiate with them. Summoning a lightning spell, one of the students charged at Rain. Rain blocked the attack with a stick while they were in a power struggle. The other guy asked who Rain thought they were and said maybe he couldn't even move anymore, so he should surrender. Sighing, Ellen said there were always people like that no matter where you went. Caroline said Ellen shouldn't see it that way. After all, it was just a strategy. The stick the other guy was using as a weapon finally broke in half, and he realized he couldn't underestimate the low levels. Rain was knocked down, and just as he was about to be hit by the low-level student's lightning, he grabbed the ground and threw sand in the student's eyes. Taking advantage of the other guy not being able to see, our protagonist threw a punch right at his face. That made the rest of the students nervous. The same guy from before wondered how Rain knew techniques from the warrior school. Ellen said she was curious about that too. The robed observers noticed the other guy didn't seem to be able to counter anymore because Rain had quick calculation ability for 3-star magic, and the warrior school. His skills were perfect, but his mana management was still rough on that front. Krista was superior to him. One of the boys said Rain had taken down the other student without using magic. However, since Rain looked completely out of mana, if they ganged up on him, they might have a chance. Ellen thought using Belsidus to stop the fire smeg must have drained his mana. The boys decided to attack one by one. Marhina thought helping others was a noble act, but if you didn't have the strength for it, it was nothing more than a meaningless gesture. She wondered what the boy was planning to do. Our protagonist faced the boys with what little strength he had left. He threw a charge punch, electrocuting all the low-level students who charged at him. That impressed the teachers. Zier asked when the boy had used that spell and how he still had mana. Kyle then explained that Rain was really out of mana, and that was actually the original property of the lightning sword. He had kept it in a plasma state, and the moment the students touched the wet ground, Rain had released the electric shock. However, knowing how to do something didn't mean you could pull it off. And honestly, Kyle said the boy looked pretty experienced. One of the boys said it was no wonder Rain was one of the top candidates for first place, but now he was out of tricks. But just as he was about to tell him to attack Rain while they still could, the other guy slapped him, agreeing with him, and covering his body in mud. The other guy said now he could beat Rain on his own. Logan asked what that was, and Krista explained it seemed to be a spell that enhanced physical abilities using mud, but it was a terrible skill for team battles because it relied on brute force. Now with his entire body covered in hard mud, the other guy said Rain could hand over his points, and everyone would walk away safely. But our protagonist refused immediately without a second thought. The other guy jumped ahead, saying Rain seemed to think he was joking, and Rain just sighed. When he landed, the other guy declared he would tear Rain apart. But when he looked around, he saw Rain was right in front of him, gripping the stick and ready to stab him with it. After hitting him with the stick, our protagonist used a lightning spell, maximizing the damage. As he pushed him back, Rain said the warrior staff technique was created by the person who walked beside him, so he shouldn't underestimate him. The other guy thought that even after everything, Rain still had strength and that last attack had left him with a sharp pain in his stomach. He wondered if he was wrong about Rain being tired, but then realized Rain had definitely reached his limit. He remembered the test were in rank for anyone who failed. Actually, the reason the faculty council was watching so closely was to adjust the scores later. In other words, the process also mattered. But the boys not only didn't get points, they lost to someone who relied completely on staff techniques without mana. It wouldn't just be his score he had to worry about. He would become a laughingstock, and he might even be expelled. Rain said that if he survived, he could get an E rank or even SE already depending on how many people dropped out. Behind him, the fight between Lillian and Gertrude was getting more intense. Looking at that, Rain said that with the two main contenders fighting like that, it wouldn't take long for this place to turn into a ruin. The exam was almost over, and he had no intention of getting involved in that fight. So, he told the other guy to make his choice, asking if he wanted to give up and accept a B rank or keep going and get expelled. Rain told him he should decide quickly as a tree trunk fell next to them. In a cold sweat, the man thought a B rank wasn't bad, but then changed his mind, thinking it was much lower than his skill level. Desperate, he wondered if he was losing his mind, because if he gave up now, he would be an idiot. I mean, anyone could see the kid in front of him was out of steam. Plus, he had used all his remaining energy on that last blow. And if he finished him right there, the kid's points would be his. Getting up, He wondered why he was hesitating so much. Because an opportunity like that wouldn't come again. He had to do it or he would be expelled. The other guy was sure he could do it. But the moment he was about to charge, Rain gave him a death glare. The big guy froze in fear, and the next second, Rain hit him with another electric shock. Just then, the end of the exam was announced, and all the students had to leave the barrier. Rain celebrated that it was finally over, then collapsed to the ground, passed out from exhaustion. The big guy, who had been worried until then, smiled in relief, saying it was finally over. Carolyn asked if Ellen was worried, and the woman said, "Not really." But then the teachers noticed something. Lillian and Gertrude didn't look like they were going to stop. Palm, as always, said that could cost them points. And Zier said, "This isn't the time to be talking about that," because at that point, the two of them had completely lost it. Marhana muttered about how annoying it was to deal with kids and tapped her staff on the ground. She removed the barrier from the area. Just as Lillian and Gertrude were about to start punching the air, they came to their senses. Annoyed, Marhana asked what was the use of having skills if you were still just a kid, then was told again that the exam was over and they needed to leave the barrier. Gertrude touched her face and realized all her wounds were gone. That's when she remembered it was all an illusion. It was the barrier's magic. Gertrude looked at Lillian and Marhana yelled at them to get out while she was still being nice. The angry teacher wondered how many times she had to repeat herself for them to get it. The robed people questioned how they could break the barrier since there was still the exam for Group B. Marhana, on the other hand, said they could just put it back up. The students returned to the waiting hall, and Lillian asked what the boy had done. He said he didn't know, and she yelled at him to answer seriously. So, Rain told her to answer his question first. He asked if she respected her father. Veins popped in the girl's eyes, and she asked if he was trying to start a fight right there. Rain said no, and she asked what that meant. He then said he thought she was somewhat like him. After all, she had planned to climb to the top by crushing everyone in her way, and that was her father's will. And the way she tried to burn everyone else for her goals was no different from what he heard about her father. But if that was the life she wanted, then nothing he said would matter. The girl then revealed she was the one who defeated the fire dragon. Rain said if she kept acting like that, they would soon face off, and then he would show her the right path, so she better be ready. Angry, she asked what he would know. He was born into a happy family with everything handed to him. As the kids arrived, Logan and Krista were waiting for them. Smiling, Gertrude asked if the girl was ready to do well. Embarrassed, Krista bumped the girl on the head, saying she was more than ready. She said the girl had a big mouth and just said whatever nonsense came to mind. Rain asked Logan what was up, and Logan said nothing. Krista said she was so embarrassed with everyone looking, and Gertrude said it was true. So, Krista said she would shut that big mouth of hers. While holding the girls close, Krista looked at Rain and asked why he was messing around earlier. Our protagonist asked what she was talking about, and Krista told him not to play dumb, saying he had saved Gertrude from the snake earlier. The boy then asked how she thought he could do that, and that Lillian's magic must have just run out by chance. A little reluctantly, Krista agreed. Turning to Gertrude, she said the girl should be punished. Rain was walking happily, and Logan asked what he was laughing about. Rain said he just found it funny because if he hadn't come here, he wouldn't have had that experience. Logan remarked that as expected, Blay was different from other schools. Rain said that was sometimes true, which confused Logan. Rain thought that if Esther hadn't left that letter, and if the privilege of meeting Lem was given to the top student of the class, he wouldn't have had that experience. He realized that in the end, Esther was right. This world was really fascinating. Gertrude watched Krista walk up to Lillian. Standing in front of Lillian, Krista said she had done something pretty interesting with her snake. Lillian was confused about what she meant. Krista said she better be ready, because she would repay that debt 100 times over, because the Warden family didn't leave debts unpaid. Back at the academy, the students were completely exhausted. However, the exams continued as if nothing had happened. On the night of the 4th day, they had a written test. And on the morning of the 5th, they had what the students called hell. Something even harder than the battle royale had happened. And just like that, the chaotic midterm exams were over. With the exam results, Zier revealed that 4 students had achieved its rank in both the practical and written tests. They were Krista Warden, Lillian, Hubert, and Rain Lui. But only one student could take first place, so they did a bonus point evaluation. Also, to keep it fair, any teacher with family or academic ties would be excluded from the evaluation. Regular teachers could give 1 bonus point. Professor Kyle could give 2. And in Marhana's case, it would be a total of 3 points. One of the teachers said that if they looked at her score, they would understand her evaluation. Another teacher said that wasn't the issue, and in terms of talent, Lillian was superior. Caroline said she was being flattered, and the teacher just complained. Time passed while they talked, and Zier said they should discuss the current scores. Krista Warden was in the lead with 6 points, followed by Lillian with 4, Hubert with 3, and Rain Lewick with 2. He now asked for Assistant Professor Kyle's vote. Kyle said Krista was truly perfect. Lillian's magic precision was also really impressive, and Hubert had shown incredible skill in combining music with magic. But even so, for the future of magic, he would cast his vote. Zier was surprised when he read the paper. He said the person who received the assistant professor's 2 votes was Rain Lewick, shocking the others. The teachers realized that he was definitely on another level, but Krista still had the most points. And the last vote was from the senior professor Marhana, who never gave bonus points, always starting with, "No one is worthy." So, the student of the year would be Krista. But Marhana cracked a smile and laughed, repeating the things about the future of magic, and saying that honestly, the guy who used cheesy lines to win over girls had grown up with a pretty smooth tongue. Kyle said it was all thanks to his master's teaching. She agreed and dropped a paper and a pen with her hand, saying she would go with that vote as an investment in the future of magic. She wrote on the paper, panicking the teachers. Zier was speechless when the paper fell into his hands. It said that the best freshman of the year in the midterm exams was Rain Lewick. In his room, Rain said he had progressed as expected. The Rudian informed him he could continue his unique magic research in a cyclical environment with a 0.8 increase in progress. Rain said that if the unique magic levels only developed through combat, it made him wonder what it would be like. And then it was time to go. In the past, Frey drank a magic potion. She then threw it away until a voice called her name. Guys asked her to share some, but Frey said she didn't have any more. He said he knew she did, and the female mage replied that she had drunk it all without sleeping for 4 days, and there was none left. But he complained, warning Lynn. When her journey was over, she wanted to know why he hadn't visited her holy sanctuary on the Red Mountain. There was something called the Dragon's Breath, a great elixir, and she would give it to him because his mana was about to skyrocket like a rocket. Guys asked if she could really give something like that so easily. Frey asked who he thought she was. She was the priestess who served the fire dragon, and she would treat him well on a trip to the Red Mountain. Rain repeated that to himself, thinking it had probably been carefully prepared, so accepting it was just polite. Even after 300 years, he said he still hadn't forgotten. It was an 8-hour trip to the top of the Red Mountain. Since the fire dragon had led his legion and stayed there for almost 1,000 years, mystical mana had permeated the entire area. Over time, a lot of followers, mages, and witches had turned that land into a sacred place. Tired, Rain continued to climb. Then someone called him. It was a man asking where he was going in such a hurry. The man asked if he was planning on plundering the mountain. Rain became wary of the suspicious guy. The stranger noticed, and said he didn't need to be so careful. He said the kid must have a good reason to plunder a place like that, and that he was just there to give him some advice. Telling the kid to listen carefully. He said this place was very dangerous. Since it was abandoned 300 years ago, no robbers had returned alive. Rain asked if it was because there was someone inside. And while he was eating, the man said people rumored that a demon summoned by the priestess was guarding the place. Rain asked if it was really a demon because there was no reason a demon would guard a holy sanctuary. The man said, honestly, people just call it a demon. They don't really know what it is. He said once, when he gathered all his courage to climb the mountain, he almost died. Like, one more step, and he would have been a goner. Before the man could finish, Rain just kept walking. As a final warning, the old man said if the kid valued his life, he shouldn't go near the entrance. As he left, Rain thanked him for the warning. If some kind of monster really lived inside the holy sanctuary, Rain thought he should be more careful. Night fell, and Rain continued to climb. He could hear animals on his way. Rain said he hated monsters like rat spiders. In a flashback, Frey asked if that was the group's mage. Esther said yes, and remarked how cute he was. Frey said even her bird was cuter, and Esther said that wasn't fair. Rain asked why they were comparing him to a pigeon, and an annoyed Frey replied it was a parrot. Back in the present, Rain said he wished he could be like Pippi. After walking for a while, he finally reached the shrine. He said just getting here was tiring enough. On top of that, he wasn't sure where to start, and decided to try the shrine entrance first. Rain noticed that even this shrine, which was supposedly built by the fire dragon, hadn't stood the test of time. After thinking for a bit, he realized that even though people said there was a demon there, he couldn't feel any presence. He walked through the gate and then an intense light appeared above him. When he looked up, he saw something that looked like a phoenix flying over the shrine. The monster charged at him. Rain barely dodged, but the paper he was holding was burned. Using a spell, he said it was a pretty bad way to greet someone. A wall rose in front of him, and the bird crashed right into it. The monster screamed in pain and flew away quickly. Rain noticed something strange about the sound it made. Remembering the past, he realized the flame was actually the bird Pippi. The firebird shot a stream of fire at him and he dodged. While running, Rain remembered the time the bird had burned his hair. He thought it was impossible. 300 years had passed. But then again, maybe it was still possible. Swallowing nervously, Rain turned back and asked if the bird was really Pippi. He dodged again, and the phoenix swooped past him, creating a strong gust of wind. Rain continued to yell, saying he was Rain. Just then, the bird seemed to come to its senses and landed next to him. Rain confirmed, making the bird remember the past. He said they even used to compete over who got to be the mascot, but the bird said he wasn't Rain because this guy looked different, and it didn't recognize that face. Back in its angry state, the bird shot a stream of fire at the boy, who blocked it with a water magic shield. Even though the situation was chaotic, Rain couldn't help but feel happy knowing Pippi was still alive after 300 years. Calling the bird, the boy said that even if his face looked different now, he was still Rain. But the bird didn't seem to want to listen, attacking again and forcing Rain to put up another barrier. Rain wondered what he had to do. There had to be something only they knew. Something that would make the bird realize it was really him. Then Rain remembered something, and started to use a water spell. He shot it at the bird, making it fall. He then used another spell, this time with 2 magic circles. He called the bird again, forming a water orb and asking if it still didn't recognize him.